Chapter 203. The instant Fairchild punched, Cat Eyes was like a big cat with its fur standing on end. Her entire body bounced up. Her hand was resting on Luo Nan's shoulder. The powerful shock transmitted from Luo Nan's body made her feel as if she had been electrocuted. Her hand was first bounced off, and then her entire body received the impact. However, this was not the most crucial factor in her intense reaction. At this moment, regardless of whether it was the encrypted channel or her own senses, all of them sent a sharp warning over. The problem was that the warning and stimulation were triggered from multiple points. They came from different directions, different intensities, and different distances. Together, they formed a giant web of danger that made one's scalp explode. It endlessly tested her ability to make decisions on the spot. However, Fairchild's punch had swept away at least 90% of the irritating choices. The only path was laid out before her eyes. Luo Nan's unconscious body bounced up faster than Cat Eyes. His body left the ground and slammed heavily into the wall behind him. He crashed into it with a boom. The mercury-like radiance on his chest rapidly permeated the moment of impact. It illuminated Luo Nan's entire body, and then it disappeared without a trace. Luo Nan's body went limp, and he sat against the wall. Cat Eyes leaped back and arrived by Luo Nan's side. However, she did not pick him up. Instead, she pressed down on his neck and pushed him down. She laid down beside him. The instant she completed this action, the soundproof walls on both sides of the room exploded with two bangs. A gap the size of half an adult's body was blasted open at practically the same time. Soundproof cotton, gypsum board, and other composite building materials flew into the air, forming a hazy, turbid mist of dust that covered most of the room. But very quickly, the dark red trajectory of the bullet cut the dust into pieces, and the special bullets bombarded the ground and the walls one after another, exploding one after another. The fragmented smoke screen and the strong sound of the electric current interweaved together, and in an instant the interior of the VIP room was swept into ruins. It was easy to imagine that if Luo Nan was still in his previous position, he would have been turned into a sieve in the blink of an eye. The other person in the high-risk area was Officer Xue Weiluan. He had been hit by Fairchild's mental storm and was sitting on the ground in a daze. He was doing his best to recover. Now, the rain of bullets descended and shrapnel flew everywhere, covering him within. Fortunately, Xue Weiluan was wearing the exoskeleton armor. Although he was swept by the wave of attacks, he did not suffer any fatal injuries. Instead, he completely woke up from the stupor of the spiritual shock. Relying on his instincts, he made a few tactical movements in a row and quickly hid in a corner, finally avoiding the frontal attack. The other people in the room were not so lucky. The two police officers who had been pulling Luo Nan and Cat Eyes had been passers-by in background for a long time. But they instantly collapsed in this wave of attacks. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Guoju, who was unconscious, was probably the unluckiest one in the first wave of attacks. He was hit directly in the back by a large-caliber sniper bullet. His upper body exploded on the spot and blood and flesh splattered everywhere. He could not be more dead. The pungent smell of blood and the rapidly surging hostility and killing intent were like an invisible burning flame that invaded Cat Eye's perception. She was forced to constantly change her perception in order to eliminate the interference and capture valuable information. However, the problem was that the other party knew very well that in the face of Fairchild's shield of truth's absolute strength and unparalleled defense, long-range firepower could only be used despite its ineffectiveness. No one would come within 100 meters of it. This made it impossible for her long-range sensing ability to display its full potential. Instead, the target of this concentrated firepower, the ears of truth, Fairchild, simply withdrew his fist after blasting Luo Nan away. He did not make any special moves, but the radiance around his body was as lustrous as mercury. Thickness could be seen amidst the flowing light. No matter what kind of bullet it was, it lost its kinetic energy before this layer of inconceivable light. The powerful sound and electricity were also blocked outside. This marvelous scene of completely defying the laws of matter caused a chill to seep through the gaps of Cat Eyes' teeth. She felt that it was inconceivable. It was precisely because of Fairchild's dazzling performance that he attracted the majority of the firepower. Cat Eyes and Officer Xue were able to catch their breaths. Wretched cries, weeping, and groans could be heard endlessly from outside. Even though the majority of the players had left this troublesome place due to the series of unforeseen events, there were still some people who were either enchanted or watching. They did not evacuate in time. The two firing points of the Knights of Equity opened up, and the two bullet trajectories on both sides of the room became a human domain. Compared to the chaotic and miserable situation outside, the luxurious room was already in shambles. From beginning to end, aside from the initial 170 decibels explosion of the stun grenade, no one else made a sound. Some people did not make it in time. Some people knew that this was completely meaningless. There were also people like Cat Eyes. After taking 2 deep breaths, she poured all of her emotions into the encrypted passageway. You guys just let the Order of Justice calmly set up 2 firing points like this? Bamboo Pole expressed his helplessness. We didn't even know if they were going to make a move before. What were we supposed to do? Plus, who would have thought that the Order of Justice would dare to play this big? This internal strife is simply the tempo of a special warfare. He sighed and continued to report the current situation. Right now they are still filling in people endlessly. Aside from the interior of Frost River Reality, there are also quite a few people who have gone to the top floors of the 3 surrounding buildings. All monitoring over there has been blocked. I don't know what they're up to. I just applied to the Society for the use of satellites or monitoring balloons in the atmosphere, but I'm afraid this won't be enough. Red Fox, who was wavering, had always been by Bamboo Pole's side. Right now, he complimented and grumbled, there are also people from the Order of Justice stationed here. We don't know when they'll come to the central control room to fight for territory. Motherf *Ker, is this really okay? Where are the negotiators from the Society? Yuan gave a simple response. The 3 first ablatums of the Order of Justice in Xia City have cut off communications. We can't contact them. Zhang Yingying clicked her tongue. I remember that they are all on the secular side. Just nice. 3 buildings, 1 per floor. Suddenly, a strange silence appeared in the encrypted channel. A full 2 seconds passed before Zhang Yingying whistled. The people of the Secret Order really are all lunatics. Now we don't have to pick a side, right? Yuan skipped over this topic. Confirm Mr. Luo's status. He's not dead yet. Cat Eyes responded snappily. She turned her head to sweep a few glances at Luonan's face. She added, his eyelids are trembling. If he's not pretending to be asleep, then he's carrying out shallow consciousness activities. Perhaps he's trying to comprehend the iron fist of love? Damn it. Don't make me guess. Cat Eye's answer represented the opinions of practically everyone in the encrypted channel. Although they were all surprised by Fairchild's fist, no one expressed any concern for Luonan's safety. This was probably the power of a lunatic and a fanatic. Common sense could not be used to judge this type of communication. One could not make wild speculations lest one be infected. At this time, Cat Eyes' eyebrows jumped. She keenly sensed the changes in the outside world. The attack has stopped. Did you guys make a move? We didn't. Zhang Yingying expressed her innocence. Chapter 204. That kid's surname seems to be Shui. He might be a disciple of some martial arts master. He's very courageous. Zhang Yingying had a deep impression of the young man who made up for her mistake. Bamboo Pole expressed his agreement, but he quickly added, but he was too rash. He doesn't have much combat experience and now he can't even lift his head against firearms. Yingying, go provide support. Yuan directly ordered. Zhang Yingying shrugged. Sorry, I'm not that familiar with you. Yuan acted as if she didn't hear this and continued to give orders. After destroying the firepower point, advance counterclockwise and eliminate all enemy personnel with firearms. Don't pay attention to pure ability users. Bamboo Pole will cooperate with you. Yuan didn't pay any more attention to her. She continued to issue orders one after the other. Bamboo Pole, first set up a special communication line for White Salt. Then, identify all the firearms personnel and try to save the video. Bamboo Pole understood Yuan's meaning. That's a good idea. The municipal government and the military have just issued a warning to all parties regarding long-range weapons and highly lethal weapons. We're all enthusiastic citizens now, aren't we? Done. As he spoke, he connected to Bai Xinyan. Her wristband vibrated slightly, and a large amount of information flooded in. Bai Xinyan smiled and lowered her head to carefully comb through the information. At the same time she raised her hand and waved at Zhang Yingying. Zhang Yingying, who had a stomach full of indignation, could only look up to the sky and roll her eyes. She turned around and snuck towards the location that the Bamboo Pole had pointed out. Yuan's tone became a bit more polite. White Salt, you are responsible for bringing your patient out, is that all right? Bai Xinyan replied with a smile, saving lives and helping the injured is a doctor's duty. But are you sure Mr. Child will like our involvement? Yuan's voice became cold again. This has nothing to do with him. After a short pause she said to the Bamboo Pole, help me connect a line. Following the muted firing of 2 long-range firepower points, many of the Knights of Equity's follow-up steps were forcibly cut off. After all, it was not an easy task to find a suitable location in the complex internal environment of the amusement park. For a short period of time, the luxurious private room that was in a mess was surprisingly quiet. Of the 4 survivors, Xue Weiluan was probably the one who didn't understand the situation the most. However, he was very conscientious and responsible. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Now the police officers also have the most concerns. His gaze swept past the other 3 people in the room, and then turned to the unconscious subordinates outside the door. The wave of intensive attacks just now was mainly aimed at the SWAT officers indoors. The SWAT officers outside were protected by the exoskeleton armor, and their vital signs were still stable at this time. This was also displayed in his command data link. Xue Weiluan should have rejoiced, but when he saw Guju's shattered limbs and the 2 other policemen gasping for breath, he couldn't help but feel conflicted. Finally, his gaze fell on the white-robed man who had been standing quietly in the middle of the room. It was this man who had brought about a series of disasters, yet he treated them as if they were nothing. To him, the concentrated shrapnel seemed to be just a drizzle in an autumn night. It did not wet him even when it touched him. This kind of monster should not appear in the world of ordinary people. The enormous pressure that followed closely with it would follow the slope created by the higher and lower levels and crush the weak and confused people like a torrent, causing terrible damage. Xue Weiluan sighed with emotion, which was rare for him. At this moment, a buzzing noise came from the communicator. A somewhat hesitant voice said, "You can talk like this? The police data link isn't that easy to hack into, right?" Even though the distance was a little far and the voice was too faint, how could Xue Weiluan not hear it? His heart tightened. "Leister, is that you?" "Dad, are you really okay?" "I'm with Nanster's friend now. Everything is fine." On the other side, Xue tried his best to make his voice sound more relaxed. The problem was that no one knew a son better than his father. Xue Weiluan could tell from his son's slight breathing that something was wrong. What's more, the dog's tail reporting that "I'm safe" was a clear loophole right in front of him. Xue Weiluan's mind spun and his hair stood up in anger. "You're here? Just based on your mediocre skills? I shouldn't have sent you to the dojo in the first place. Do you know what kind of place this is?" In a moment of desperation, Xue Weiluan couldn't care less about anything else. His roar rushed out of his visor and echoed in the ruined private room. Despite being separated by several hundred meters, Xue was still harshly lectured by his father. Xue could only shrink back for a time. Zhang Yingying giggled happily to the side. No matter who was unlucky, she was always able to find some fun. "Xue, did you hear that? Get the hell out of here right now. Xue, this chapter is not finished. Please turn the page." Xue Luan's roar swept through the damaged room with air leaking in all directions. There wasn't even a single echo. But Luo Nan, who was pressed to the ground by cat eyes, opened his eyes after his eyelids trembled twice. "Oh, Leister came in? You're awake?" Cat Eyes was a bit surprised. "I thought you were going to pretend to be unconscious until things were over." Pretending to be unconscious was naturally an insult. Luonan just laughed at this. But he soon discovered that he was lying shoulder to shoulder with Cat Eyes. They were too close to each other. The two could even hear each other's breaths. It was a bit awkward. Luonan flipped over and sat up. This single movement caused the bones and muscles of his entire body to emit fine sounds. His body froze, but he soon relaxed. He twisted his neck and the expression on his face was rather subtle. Cat Eyes was still lying on the ground. She said with a frown, "Hey, aren't you afraid of getting shot in the head? Didn't they all get cleaned up? The remaining long-range firepower points are all retreating outside." Cat Eyes felt that the two's current posture was far too awkward. She saw that Luonan spoke with certainty and thought for a moment. She simply sprung up and glared at him with cold eyes. "How do you know?" "I'm fine." Luonan responded slowly. His gaze never left Xue Weiluan, who was on the other side. Xue Weiluan was already hopping mad. This Uncle Xue was such a calm and resolute person. He would act the same way when his own child was in trouble. This sort of interaction was indeed very interesting. "You're really free." Cat Eyes' brows furrowed even tighter. Luonan gave off a slightly different feeling after waking up. It was as if his crazy attribute had been strengthened once more. He could sink into a zone of thought that others could not understand at any time and place. The problem was that even if he was crazy, others might not be a fanatic. As soon as Cat Eyes had this thought, the fanatic, yes, Fairchild, who had been standing quietly all this time, moved. He turned his body and took 2 steps, immediately attracting everyone's gazes. Even Shui Weiluan temporarily stopped reprimanding his own son to pay close attention. Blocking in front of Fairchild were the 3 multifunctional robots that Fairchild had kicked to a halt not too long ago. Right now, they had already been baptized by the special bullets in front of them. They were completely scrapped. Even the system's self-checks had been suspended. Today is still 2 updates. The holidays are finally here. I won't say anything to avoid ruining my character. See you all tomorrow. Chapter 205. Fairchild stood in front of the 3 piles of scrap metal. Wherever his gaze passed, the somewhat distorted metal structure seemed to have been cut by an invisible blade. One by one they disintegrated. The 3 piles of scrap metal collapsed, revealing the figure of a person. It was Huang Bingjin. This brother had been unconscious to begin with. He was pressed down by a stretcher and there were a few robots blocking his way. He had completely lost his sense of existence. Surprisingly, he had not died under the rain of bullets just now. He had only been injured by the shrapnel. Now he woke up from the pain and began to moan for help. Fairchild extended his hand. Of course, this had nothing to do with Huang Bingjin. In the next moment, a palm-sized metal box silently bounced up from the pile of metal parts and fell into his hand. Is this the storage of the human-faced arachnid? Cat Eyes swept her gaze over the metal box. It was hard for her to match it with the image of the human-faced arachnid. When that damn Guiju had confessed, he had explained the cause and effect of the matter in great detail. With Cat Eye's long-range perception, she naturally would not have missed it. Inside the metal box was the core object that had triggered this incident. It was the raw materials for the creation of the human-faced arachnid and the corresponding key information. As long as she had this metal box and used a special method to restore it, a human-faced arachnid could jump out at any moment. Even though it was just a model, it could be said to be a fake. It possessed extraordinary power and functions. The reason why the previous performance had been like a farce was mainly because the driver, Huang Bingjin, who was moaning and wailing on the ground, was far too clumsy. Fairchild quietly sized up the metal box. He was extremely serious and focused. Because of this, everyone present unconsciously held their breaths and focused their minds. They were afraid that they would alarm this person and cause some sort of trouble. It was at this moment that a voice suddenly rang out. Fairchild, do you not feel even the slightest bit of regret when faced with this masterpiece? Everyone else in the room was fiercely shocked. Cat Eyes felt a chill run down her back. The voice had come too strangely. It had appeared out of nowhere in this messy room. It was weak and sharp like the hissing of a snake when it flicked its tongue. She had not sensed such a special voice at all. It had clearly rung in her ears but she could not grasp any clues. The so-called long-range perception had become a mere decoration. In the encrypted channel, this chapter has yet to end. Please continue. Yuin uploaded a message. Secret bound first ablatum, words of Krite. At this moment, anyone in the channel who had some understanding of the Order of Justice's organizational structure was trembling in fear. The Order of Justice was a world-class secret order. Moreover, they regarded fair exchange as their core doctrine. When it came to oaths, they placed unimaginable importance on them. This was especially true for the secular side. Many of their core secrets and profundities were maintained by strict and cruel oaths. From the lowest to the highest, the overt oath, the secret pact, and the heart illumination were the witnesses, executors, and punishers of the oaths. They were also the axis of power in the entire church's system. Although the secret-bound first ablatum was only in the middle of the first ablatum rank, within the Order of Justice, the status of a priest was one level higher than that of the other members of the Order of Justice. Even a worldwide secret order like the Order of Justice only had a little over 100 members. On average, each large metropolitan area would only have 1 or 2 members. Therefore, every single one of them had the power to oversee an area. They had the power to take charge of an area by themselves. In terms of political status, the society needed to bring out the leader of the Xia City branch, Ouyang Qin. Only then would they be equal. But upon careful thought, it was not strange. This sudden chaos was a contest of power between the upper echelons of the Order of Justice. Fairchild, the Ears of Truth, was an illustrious powerhouse even on the world level. He was infinitely close to the domain of extraordinary. From the looks of it, the extravagance of Frost River reality really did not amount to much. It was just that the innocent citizens lying in pools of blood and the insignificant ability users like them had to suffer. Damn it, that's enough. Red Fox could not help but complain in the encrypted channel. This is no longer a problem of a city gate catching fire. This is simply a fight between gods. Normally they can't even hide, but they actually ran into us with their eyes wide open. For the time being, no one replied to him because Fairchild responded, "No matter how exquisite a work is, it is nothing more than a toy to satisfy the selfish desires of a blasphemer. I don't see how it has the qualifications to be called a masterpiece." The secret-bound First Ablatum used the secret technique of words of Crite and laughed in a low voice. As for where he was, no one knew. "Oh Fairchild, I must. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Let me remind you this time. Your logic can be perfectly replaced by the scales of truth. Are you saying that the sacred object that can bear the weight of the Order's sacrificial vessel is nothing more than a big toy to satisfy the desires of the believers?" Fairchild's expression did not change. This was not the first time such a debate had occurred. He knew very well that using words to refute Wang was meaningless. Wang, you only need to understand one thing. This thing will not return to your hands. Your laughable, divine replacement will ultimately become a meaningless dream. So you choose to cooperate with the Ability User Society? Fairchild did not react to Wang's words, but all the members of the society who shared cat eyes felt their hearts tremble. These words were tantamount to the most serious accusation. A single misstep would be the beginning of a conflict between the two world organizations, the Order of Justice and the Ability User Society. Fairchild was too lazy to defend himself. "I only eliminate those who blaspheme against the truth." The entire room trembled slightly as soon as he finished speaking. The mercury-like radiance around Fairchild's body rippled and tore apart all channels of information flow. The words of Crite was also blocked outside. Fairchild immediately dropped his arm. The snow-white sleeve of his robe covered the metal box. No one knew what he would do next. However, the encrypted channel was in an uproar because of this series of words. Red Fox was the most excited. He let out a blood-curdling scream. "We've really been tricked this time. Fairchild is pushing the boat with the current. He's using it too ruthlessly. Eliminate your sister. Cooperation your sister. Can't you just make things clear?" Zhang Yingying had entered the channel a little late and she had not looked at the historical information in detail. She was completely confused and had the mentality of watching a good show. "That metal box is really crucial. I'm afraid there will be a bloodbath over it. The human-faced arachnid is hidden in this box. That Guiju came specifically to retrieve it. But I heard him say something about downloading it?" Bamboo Pole, a technician, was more concerned about technical issues. He asked Cat Eyes, "What did that Guiju say earlier?" Cat Eyes shared her perspective with her companion. She happened to be in the middle of Fairchild and Guiju's conversation. Most people in the encrypted channel did not receive the complete message. It was inevitable that they were confused at this time. Chapter 206. Cat Eyes felt a headache coming on. This involved some complicated theories and Guiju himself was muddle-headed. Naturally, some parts of his explanation were very vague. There were many parts that she did not understand. She could only speak in a simple manner. "I heard that this is the most successful experiment of the secular side's human-faced arachnid. If they continue to research it, their final goal will be to mass-produce it? Am I right?" "Hey, I'm asking you a question." Cat Eyes jabbed Luonan. Luonan was a bit surprised. "You're asking me? Who else would I ask? This is a serious matter that Fairchild needs to handle. You chatted so happily with him. Did you ask him clearly?" "There's no value in discussing this." Luonan shook his head honestly. His conversation with Fairchild mainly concerned the mutual interference between the mental and material planes. As for the human-faced arachnid exoskeleton armor, it was a simple structure on the mental plane. It was also a simplified version. It could not even be considered a soul configuration. How could there be any discussion? Cat Eyes could not help but roll her eyes. It turned out that this person had not come out of his mental state. Red Fox, who had been highly nervous and had long since been resentful, could not help but let out dozens of clicking sounds in the encrypted channel. In the end he chuckled coldly. "Mr. Luo, young Master Luo, are you saying that our group of people took the risk of falling out with the Order of Justice and came here to support you just for this thing that has no value in discussing? Great. You really are great. Then we won't serve you anymore, okay?" Red Fox swung his hand and walked away. Bamboo Pole saw that the situation was not right. He grabbed Red Fox and said, "Hold on. Don't be angry." Luonan didn't make it clear. The topic of discussion between him and Fairchild is a bit more abstract. It might not be related to this matter. "So you know about abstract? That's why we accompanied him here and there?" "I've said it before. The goal of today's operation was unclear from the beginning. The responsibility was unclear. We rushed over here based on the guidance of a mental patient. We didn't see the human-faced arachnid, but we bumped into the infighting of the Order of Justice. In the end, the main character didn't even make a move. We shamelessly went up and spent a lot of effort to clean up the mess. He, the henchman of the Order of Justice, the vanguard of the conflict. Does this name sound good? Red Fox was furious. If he had not been involved in this matter, he would have treated Luo Nan and Fairchild's exchange as a joke and laughed it off. But now he and Bamboo Pole were in Yulon Hotel's central control room. They had already been exposed. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The Knights of Peace would come over sooner or later. Conflict was inevitable. It would have been fine if Luo Nan had been able to clearly sort out the cause and effect of the matter at this time. He would have apologized and added thanks. But in the end, Luo Nan just said, "There's no value in discussing?" Just how ignorant was this brat? Furthermore, he had a deeper worry. Up until now, the society still hasn't given a clear explanation. The experts haven't arrived yet, and there's no sign of any coordination. If we really discuss this matter with the Order of Justice in the future, what would we amount to? The first wave of cannon fodder? Or are you using him as a scapegoat? Bamboo Pole continued to advise him, "You worry too much. President Ouyang isn't that kind of person. That's because you haven't seen what the headquarters is like. Or perhaps, do you think that this sort of thing can be controlled within the boundaries of Xia City? Brothers and sisters, do you still not understand? This matter has already gotten out of hand. These secret orders are the best at dealing with matters of faith. They make a mountain out of a molehill. Headquarters, on the other hand, is politically correct from start to finish. Right now, we don't even have a single piece of evidence. Don't tell me that we have to send over the call records to prove our own innocence?" He Yuan tried to advise him, "Red Fox, I'm talking to Boss Luo." "Secretary, shut up." Red Fox grew angrier the more he thought about it. He didn't give face to anyone. He scolded anyone who dared to speak. The encrypted channel became extremely awkward when these words were spoken. Red Fox made it clear that he only wanted Luo Nan's attitude. Anyone else who spoke would only add fuel to the fire. Luo Nan was distracted for a few moments before he discovered that he was being targeted by Red Fox. He wasn't really ignorant. He just didn't think too much about it. He just spoke his mind. The faith product he named the human-faced arachnid exoskeleton armor was essentially a simplified version of the soul configuration. With the live demonstration from before and the wraith sign as a solid reference, Luo Nan just needed to gather enough negative emotions to create one on the spot. It wasn't a difficult matter. This wasn't Fairchild's area of expertise. Fairchild probably didn't know this better than Luo Nan. Luo Nan felt quite wronged for a time. But when he thought about it from the other side, he had rashly reported the warning of the human-faced arachnid. He didn't listen to He Yuan's instructions and headed straight for the site of the incident, causing the situation to escalate. He was indeed in the wrong first. Red Fox had faced many changes to the mission target. Though he grumbled endlessly, he still followed them from start to finish. Now he was facing a direct conflict with the Order of Justice. The danger was extremely high. Please continue to the next page if this chapter is not finished. He really did have the qualifications to get angry. Luo Nan didn't mind apologizing and saying a few soft words. However, he really didn't know how to respond in this complicated context. He looked at Cat Eyes, who was closest to him. Cat Eyes had her arms crossed over her chest. She had a cold and cynical expression that said, "Seeing you embarrassed makes me feel good." However, the index and middle fingers of her right hand were raised and hooked downwards. Her meaning was for Luo Nan to lower his head and admit his mistake. She had been sharing her perspective all this time. This method was more covert, making it harder for others to discover her. However, this kind of notification was far too vague. At this time, two good friends simultaneously communicated with him in the private interface. One was He Yuan. The other was actually Zhang Yingying. Apologize to Red Fox. Try to communicate with Fairchild. Ask him clearly about the human-faced arachnid. Say a few words to Fairchild. Put on a show. Red Fox is a grumpy person. Give him a way out of this embarrassing situation. The messages from the two were different, but the meaning was the same. They were both teaching Luo Nan a way to ease the situation. He Yuan's actions were consistent with her style. However, Zhang Yingying's secret assistance was a bit unexpected to Luo Nan. Luo Nan wanted this kind of specific guidance. He let out a breath of relief and obediently responded in the encrypted channel, "I'm sorry, Red Fox. I didn't think things through just now. I'll communicate with Fairchild a bit more." Luonan was pondering as he spoke. Though Red Fox had said a bunch of angry words, there were some things that he could understand very clearly. Right now, the biggest problem for the members of the society was that they were unable to separate themselves from the internal strife of the order of justice. They gave others a reason to speak against them, but they did not have any concrete evidence to prove their innocence. Luonan thought about it a bit more. Though he already understood the configuration of the human-faced arachnid, it was all empty talk. If the society were to negotiate with the order of justice, the evidence would be lacking. The true and irrefutable evidence was naturally the metal box in Fairchild's hands. Luonan more or less understood Fairchild's personality. Fairchild had obtained the storage device, but he would at most verify it. It was more likely that Fairchild would simply destroy it. That would be far too wasteful. With this thought clear, Luonan spoke to Fairchild. "Mr. Fairchild, if you don't need that storage device, leave it for us to store as evidence." Cat eyes? He Yuan? Zhang Yingying! Red Fox, F*CK me? What the hell are you doing? Chapter 207. The instant Luonan's words left his mouth, Red Fox was not the only one who exploded. Everyone in the encrypted channel was furious. You saw it, you saw it." The Red Fox shouted until the end and was completely exhausted. Even his cries had turned into moans. "I knew it. This fellow is purely a scammer. What a fool." Zhang Yingying slapped herself on the face, feeling too ashamed to face anyone. Even if Shuelei, who was beside her, looked at her as if she was a lunatic, she couldn't care less. How naive was she? Only then would they believe that the youth who was serious about becoming an employee could handle this matter by himself. Bamboo Pole, who had always thought that he possessed the calmness of a technician, couldn't help but say, "In the future, it's better to let him use his pen and not his mouth." Truthfully speaking, Luonan's words just now really left people speechless. It would be too presumptuous to say that it was a request. After all, Fairchild had just expressed his attitude towards the secret-bound officiant, Unwang. That metal box was an important item that was not up for discussion. Why should he give it to him? A single mistake and they would fall out with each other. It would be absurd to call it a negotiation. Right now, the Order of Justice's secular faction had their eyes on this metal box. Even if they were to start a massacre in the bustling city center, they would not hesitate. With this kind of determination and willpower, anything could be burned to a crisp. Yet you actually want to take it? What kind of spirit was this? Actually, Luonan himself felt a bit odd after he spoke those words. He saw the reaction in the encrypted channel and knew that he had said the wrong thing. But at this time, Fairchild turned his head and locked gazes with Luonan. He muttered to himself for a moment before nodding. "If you want it, here." As he spoke, Child had already tossed the metal box in his hand, crisp and efficient. "Don't take it. Can you not be so fragile? Look, he's taking advantage of the situation." The encrypted channel was filled with a wave of rejection, but it was impossible for Luonan to slap the metal box back. He instinctively extended his hand, and the metal box was placed between his 5 fingers. There was a slight feeling of heat in his hand, like the heat dissipating from a high-speed operating instrument. At this moment, in the encrypted channel, half of the people were wailing, while the other half remained silent. The atmosphere was like the end of the world. It was well done. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Was he stupid? Hopelessly stupid? Luonan always had a bit of a temper. It wasn't that he couldn't accept opinions, but he admitted that his level of communication still needed to be improved. But what the hell was this atmosphere, as if the planet was going to explode in the next moment? The metal box had played an important role in the whole process. From the moment Guiju confessed, it should have been obvious to everyone. He took a deep breath and sent out a message in the encrypted channel. Isn't this storage unit the ironclad proof that the Order of Justice is researching and experimenting with the human-faced arachnid? Yo, does young Master Luo feel wronged? The Red Fox sneered. Solid evidence? Based on the external parts of a robot? Based on the one-sided statement of a dead man? Or was it based on the obscure communication between Child and the secret covenant officiant? Young Master Luo, let me teach you something. The words of Krite is a secret covenant technique of the Order of Justice. No equipment can record it. Luonan was baffled. He continued to speak in the encrypted channel. The society intervened so early. All sorts of monitoring, perspective sharing and video archiving have been done extremely well. The entire plot chain is clear and complete. It is far too easy to fake in this world. Your ability user society intervened so early. You guys must have made arrangements long ago, right? Red Fox mimicked the words of the Order of Justice, directly making Luonan choke. Luonan felt that he was unable to speak, but he was unwilling to admit defeat. He ground his teeth and used his mind as the tip of a pen to draw a simplified 2D structure diagram in the encrypted channel. Although it was simplified, the crisscrossing lines and the precise layout of the graphics stitched together made the encrypted channel go silent. Red Fox was a bit stupefied. What do you mean by this? Are you trying to curse me? Luonan hastily drew the diagram and used the marking function of the psychic wave network. He used an eye-catching red pen to draw over a dozen red circles on the 2D structure diagram in a single breath. This is the energy and information storage structure used by the storage unit. It includes the simplified restoration technique. Many of the details involved are special patterns that appear over and over again. Are these the exclusive uses of the Order of Justice? Actually, many of these structures appeared in the configuration of Child's Shield of Truth. They were used as extremely crucial nodes, which was why Luonan dared to be so certain. The internal core structure of the storage unit is unique. If this chapter is not finished, please flip the page. Special craftsmanship and usage. Tracing back from this clue and combining all sorts of information and evidence, wouldn't we be able to seize the initiative and solve an ironclad case? Red Cat was defeated by this technological geek's way of thinking. He didn't know how to respond for a time. Bamboo Pole, who was next to him, was watching with rapt attention. He muttered, I don't know if this is the exclusive craftsmanship of the Order of Justice, but from the information I've gathered, there are indeed many similar structural arrangements within the Order of Justice's internal rituals. It's just that they're a bit deformed. Is it used for storage? Bamboo Pole was an outstanding hacker, but he was also an expert in researching secret orders. His words naturally held a lot of credibility. The group's attention was more or less scattered due to the matter of the structure diagram. Zhang Yingying asked curiously, is this the internal structure of the metal box? How did the precision of your senses improve so quickly? If this is the internal structure of the storage unit, then it's the result of my mental senses just now. Then, with the volume of the metal box, the precision of my mental senses should be close to the micron level. After entering the encrypted channel, Bai Xinyan, who had been silent all this time, spoke for the first time. She spoke with a dull tone, Student Luonan, the burden on your body is too heavy. Luonan remembered that she used to address him as Mr. Luo. Was this a drop in status? He was stunned for a moment before he responded, there's nothing wrong with my body. I just believe that this evidence is sufficient to prove the facts. It can be completely turned into an ironclad case. Red Fox slowed down after being continuously interrupted by these people. He saw that Luonan was still stubborn, so he went all out with Luonan. Handle a case? What case will you handle? Handle whose case? Who will handle the case? The society handles the case of the Order of Justice. That's not called handling a case. It's called conflict. It's called all-out war. Young Master Luo, no matter how large the ability user association behind you is, it is only a loose organization of members. A single operation would cause quite a few people to run away. As for the Order of Justice in front of you, it is a world-class secret order with millions of pious believers and a handful of extraordinaires. Do you understand the gravity of this? Also, there's a common saying in this world. It's called, 1 yard is another yard. The society can make things difficult for the Order of Justice. They can say that they are raising human-faced arachnids. There's no problem with that. But for the Order of Justice, you can't involve yourself in their internal affairs. This is F*King politics. This is F*King reality. Chapter 208. A string of cynicism and mockery was sent over. While Red Fox was talking incessantly, he made the same mistake as a newbie. He used the hexaear as a communication device. He completely forgot about telepathic communication and simply roared. After this wave of roars, Red Fox's mood did not ease. Instead, he became even more agitated. He smashed his fist heavily on the control panel and cursed, "Idiot." Even so, he still felt agitated. He tugged at his red jacket and cursed again, "Scammer?" Bamboo Pole shook his head. He did not speak in the encrypted channel. He only spoke in a simple manner and advised, "Don't look at how he calls you mister. You're still a child. Also, Xia City is different from Hu City." Red Fox's expression turned even uglier when he heard the words Hu City. He swept an icy glance over. The only difference is the distance from headquarters. Back in the day, I ran out of Hu City like a dog. Now that I'm in Xia City, I don't want to become a dead dog and be casually thrown into some garbage dump. Bamboo Pole shrugged and did not continue to persuade him. This was because the monitoring system showed that there were a few unfriendly faces heading towards the control room. He sighed and asked in the encrypted channel, "The expected trouble has come. What should we do?" Hiyuan asked him, "Can you confirm the enemy's weapon right now?" Bamboo Pole understood Hiyuan's meaning. She was not asking about the people who were about to block the door. She was asking about the arrangements the Order had arranged at Yulan Hotel to deal with Fairchild. Oh, this guy was more stubborn than I imagined. Big guy. The main weapon must be a big guy. Bamboo Pole was multitasking. He repeatedly switched the monitoring screen and confirmed the target that had already begun to be set up. It's very likely to be a sniper cannon. From what I know, many secret orders are researching a magically modified version of the sniper grenade launcher. This toy is much stronger than a charged particle cannon against a single target. Of course, the effect of breaking through the shield of truth is still questionable. Hiyuan did not say anything more. She simply responded, "Retreat. Head for the preset rendezvous point." Red Fox sneered from the side. He made a look and I'll know gesture towards Bamboo Pole. The corner of Bamboo Pole's mouth twitched. "You called them young master when you went against the Order. Now that you retreated, you threw up your hands. In the end, you were still unhappy." In the end, Bamboo Pole did not say anything. He tidied up the equipment in the control room in 5 seconds and walked out with the Red Fox. The central control room was located on a floor close to the top floor, so no accommodation was arranged. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. It was empty and quiet. Red Fox also felt that his attitude was somewhat inappropriate. He mumbled, "It's already too late to retreat now. They caught the Order unprepared at Frost River Reality and now they dare to ambush us from all sides. Holy crap." In front of them, the isolation door of the fire escape was pushed open heavily. Nobody could be seen. However, Bamboo Pole and the Red Fox were astute people. They knew at a glance that the intruder did not come with good intentions. They looked at each other, turned around and ran. The fine electric current of the electromagnetic rifle behind him was exceptionally terrifying in the empty floor. "I'm not a fighter." Bamboo Pole cursed loudly. Before the curses left his mouth, he had already pressed a special button on the flexible screen in his hand. The fire alarm on the floor went off and several insulating partitions dropped down. The electromagnetic bullet left the chamber, but it exploded against this layer of transparent partitions. It only pierced through one layer before its trajectory changed. At this time the side door opened. Bamboo Pole shouted, "This way." He and the Red Fox charged in one after the other. They passed through the room at high speed. They did not stop at all. They passed through the already wide-open window and leaped into the night sky at a height of nearly 1,000 meters. After this suicidal action, it was as if the two were riding on flaming wheels. They slid down the glass wall of the hotel at an astonishing speed. Bamboo Pole had some difficulty controlling his balance. He laughed mischievously. No wonder the Society's elementary training classes always use rapid descent from a high level as their graduation exam. It really is useful. Red Fox gnashed his teeth. It's true that young Master Luo, the trickster, has finally been given a proper name. The chaotic situation at Yulan Hotel naturally appeared in the encrypted channel. Red Fox, who complained the most, could not be distracted right now. Luo Nan received less than half of the criticism, but his mood did not improve. Words were like knives. They did not cut the skin but the pit of the heart. Luo Nan was baptized by Red Fox's political and realistic speech. He was speechless. This was not to say that he felt that he was wrong. On the contrary, he felt that the louder Red Fox clamored, the more the resentment in the depths of Red Fox's heart surged. In the end, Red Fox was not targeting Luo Nan at all. It was clearly the political and realistic things that he had always flaunted. Luo Nan was nothing more than a target for ridicule and ridicule. If what Red Fox said was true, then the Order of Justice had used this demon as a reference when the human-faced arachnid was wreaking havoc in Xia City and engaged in sinister research. Then the facts were right there. The irrefutable evidence was like a mountain. In the end, the Order of Justice could be easily exempted and even bite back. What did this mean? This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. As for the veracity of Red Fox's words, let's not talk about the reactions of some people in the encrypted channel. Luo Nan's personal experience with the Blood Flame Order was a very good example. Mo Luan had brought the human-faced arachnid to graze, and made a move against the members of the society. In the end, the matter was left unsettled. Back then Luonan had taken over the human-faced arachnid's nest. He had taken great advantage of it, so Luonan did not think too much about it. Now that he thought about it, wasn't it just as Red Fox had said? Politics? Reality? Luonan would not find it strange at all if this happened in the secular society. This was because he had a pessimistic view of the hearts of the secular people. But right now, the enormous ability user organization of the inner world, which had largely detached itself from the secular world, was like this as well. Luonan still wanted to carry forward his grandfather's formatting theory in the society. If there was no difference between this place and the secular society, how could he guarantee that his grandfather's theory would not suffer the same fate as it did back then? Disappointment. He was extremely disappointed. This was Luonan's current state of mind. He did not want to say much. He just flipped the warm metal box in his hand back and forth. If it was possible, he wanted to be quiet for a bit. But how could he have the chance to be quiet right now? As his state of mind flipped along with the metal box, he clearly sensed that there was clearly some sort of extremely obscure power on the mental plane. It was currently creating disturbances in this region. And the feeling was extremely negative. It was like a gloomy layer of clouds that obscured most of the pulsation of life. Luonan could feel the malice rippling through the void. This was the true means of the secular side. Luonan's hand stopped moving as the dark cloud pressed down. He raised his head slightly and just happened to meet Child's eyes. Those gray pupils looked like layers upon layers of hazy dark clouds at first glance. However, the firm willpower was like sunlight that pierced through the clouds. It was hard to look straight at. Child did not know why Luonan was in a daze. His gaze still fell on the metal box that Luonan was flipping over and over in his hand. A moment later he suddenly spoke. "We have yet to touch the entirety of truth. We are filled with anticipation toward its true appearance. Because of this, we are exceptionally unable to endure interference, as well as the blasphemy toward our pursuit of goals. The truth has yet to be seen in its entirety. I can only guarantee that the place I stand is the domain of truth." As his voice rose and fell, the light on his body flowed like mercury. It reflected a faint glow on the ground, and a blurry wave of light spread outward. Men are afraid of entering the wrong profession. Chapter 209. The dark clouds on the mental plane covered the entire surrounding area. They constantly disturbed and changed, attempting to attack Child's domain. Later on, due to the continuous changes, the essence of the dark clouds appeared. They transformed into sinister and fleeting whispers of incantations that appeared on the material plane. Words of Krite. Cat Eyes reached out and pulled Luonan back. Her expression was grave, as if she was facing a great enemy. The point of fire was blocked, resulting in a momentary disconnection. Then the methods of the secular side finally appeared once more. Moreover, they had already given up on traditional long-range attacks. They directly used extraordinary powers. This was not First Ablatum and Wang's mode of pure communication. The hissing incantations were filled with the power of darkness and cold. The lighting within the room had been mostly wiped out due to the shrapnel of the rain of bullets. When the incantations manifested, the darkness grew deeper. The little bit of light that was left revealed bizarre and dazzling scattered trajectories. It was as if the room had been warped. In comparison, the space that the light of Child's shield of truth could fill was limited. However, the place where he stood still shone with light. It was pure and clear. No matter how the incantations disturbed and changed, not even a little bit of it could seep in. Luonan's eyes focused on the pure and clear light. He muttered hoarsely, "The place where I stand is the domain of truth. If you want to believe in religion, you'll have to wait until you return alive." Cat Eyes tugged at Luonan again, indicating that he should pay attention to the encrypted channel. He Yuan had already issued the order to retreat. Luonan did not move. It would not be easy for them to leave under the current circumstances. In the next moment, the light coming from the main door was cut off. There were two more thumps. Someone was knocking on the door frame. The force was so great that the entire room seemed to tremble twice. However, the person at the door did not seem to have any intention of deliberately exerting force. This person was not wearing any protective armor. He was over 2 meters tall. He stood in front of the door with his head slightly lowered to avoid bumping into the door. He was even bare-chested. His skin was pitch black and glossy. His bulky muscles were connected by tough fascia. They rose and fell with his breathing. He was like a standing black tiger. Just by looking at his physique, he was stronger than the already tall and sturdy Child. The person ignored the gazes of the others in the room. He simply welcomed the light from Child's body and grinned, revealing his snow-white teeth. Mr. Child, long time no see. Oh, you might not remember me? Baze, Child whispered the man's name. Thank you, Mr. Child, for remembering me. The dark-skinned man named Baze addressed him as Mr. Child. His tone was polite and gentle, which did not match his appearance. I've always been very grateful to you for teaching me when I first joined the cult. You were the one who taught me the stages of cultivation and the importance of temperance. Unfortunately, I chose another path in the end. I feel that the unrestrained, simple and violent style suits me better. Moreover, my strength has not left me because of this. Luo Nan watched Baze display the appearance of master and disciple reuniting, but he felt an extremely dangerous tension emerge from the body of this dark-skinned brawny man. He could not help but ask, who is he? Black Tiger Baze. He's the vice-captain of the Knights of Equity's Xia City branch. Cat Eyes extended her hand to support the crooked brim of her hat. She subconsciously made her entire outfit more neat and tidy in preparation for the upcoming bitter battle. Since there was internal strife among the upper echelons of the Order of Justice, the appearance of a fellow like Baze was not strange at all. However, the pressure of theory and the feeling of reality were different in the end. She needed to give Luo Nan, who lacked common sense, a supplementary lesson. At the same time, she gave herself a reminder: he's a freak who can defeat and awaken purely by relying on his innate physical strength. But there are also people who say that he obtained this ability through the Order of Justice's life and death sacrifice. In any case, if you were to pick the 10 people with the strongest physical strength in Xia City, Cragburst would barely rank at the bottom. Senior Giant Arm and Senior Zhongji of the society would probably rank in the middle. They rely on explosive power and skill to win. And this person can rank in the top 3 no matter what. Luo Nan went, oh. Finally, he had a clearer understanding of Baze's strength. He had personally witnessed the abilities of Cragburst, and Giant Arm Cragburst was someone who could remain unscathed even under high-explosive incendiary bombs. As for Mr. Giant Arm, he was a pure martial artist. The power of his fist penetrated through the metal box and forcefully stuck Jack, who was in the deep blue walker state, to the spot. He truly did possess inconceivable skill. Luo Nan did not know what kind of style he would display when he truly fought. Baze was able to suppress those two in terms of physical strength. His strength could be imagined. At this time, He Yuan sent out a message in the encrypted channel: pay attention. Baze's physical strength is admittedly powerful, but he has never relied on his physical strength. As for what he relied on, Baze, who was blocking the entrance to the room, had already begun to reveal it. He took a deep breath and lowered his head slightly. His pitch-black skin was already shining with a glossy sheen. Pattern after pattern continued to light up. It was as if an incorporeal object was writing warped characters on his body. The light in the surrounding area warped even more fiercely. It was as if every character had ignited with fire, penetrating deep into his body and burning through the void. The hissing of the words of Krite echoed like this. Aside from the hissing of a viper, it was also like the sound of flesh burning. He Yuan's interpretation was updated in a timely manner. Baze is a human weapon of the Order of Justice. Through him, the first ablatum can fully display the power that exists on the mental plane. So there's actually such a method. Luo Nan had gained some experience. This was a method of application that he had never thought of before. For a pure mentally enhanced user, this should be quite a decent change. It was just that the human weapon was not that easy to cultivate. Luo Nan muttered to himself for a bit, but Cat Eyes glared at him. What are you thinking about? Nothing. Luo Nan was more or less duplicitous. It would have been fine if Cat Eyes hadn't mentioned it, but her mention had evoked his train of thought. It seemed that the support he gave to Ink Ruewen, and even Cat Eyes, could be considered a transformation of this method in a certain sense. It was just that he was a bit more passive. A few thoughts flashed through Luo Nan's mind, and Baze took heavy steps forward. His robust body entered the room along with the darkness. The muscles on his body rippled in an orderly fashion, and the bizarre characters seemed to come alive. Every time they shifted, they formed a demonic and bizarre scene. It was as if dark flames were emitting from them as they pounced forward. The dark flames intersected with the area of light around Fairchild's body. In an instant, black and white rays of light fused to form a distorted layer of ash. Baze raised his head, and his pupils were like burning coal. His mouth split open. Fairchild, the truth does not obey your imagination. A bizarre noise seeped out from Baze's voice. It was clearly an unsuccessful harmony. There was a bizarre existence that was speaking in sync with Baze. Fairchild's response to this was a single sentence. Scram. For the fastest and most accurate novel reading, please visit Chapter 210. Fairchild's snow-white robes fluttered, and the mercury-like radiance suddenly undulated. The gray layer that had just formed was torn apart. Baze's feet left the ground from the powerful assault, and he flew backward involuntarily. Mirror of truth. Through Cat Eye's shared perspective, a group of society members who had the time to watch practically spammed the screen with this word. Fairchild practically did not exert any strength in that instant. Instead, he used the Shield of Truth's outstanding technique to forcefully rebound Baze's attack back, allowing Baze to absorb it all. One only needed to look at the momentum of Baze's raging dark flames to know just how inconceivable it was to achieve this near-total reflection. This was Fairchild's most classic method of judgment. Though he had never determined the name of this move, he had long since given it a proper name in the circle of ability users. It had an illustrious reputation. Luonan could see it even more clearly. It was not a simple matter of the material plane, nor was it an effect of physics. It was a structural power formed by the mutual interference of the mental and material planes. He could even capture the entire process of the intense ripples that blossomed on the mental and material planes separating and merging. In the end, they converged on the material plane to form an enormous impact force. However, Baze's mental plane remained stable. He even took the initiative to change the flow of energy. The impact force on the material plane became stronger, but it also eliminated the damage to the mental plane, maintaining the stability of the domain of words of Krite. From this perspective, Baze was not actually at a disadvantage. The power of the two had always been cutting back and forth between the mental and material planes. The most difficult part of this method lay in realizing the transformation technique of mutual interference. Whether it was Fairchild or Baze, they both achieved this through the structure of the interference of body and soul. Their inhumanly strong physiques and firm willpower were precisely the foundation to realize this transformation. It would be very difficult for Luonan to realize a similar transformation mode in his lifetime. However, Luonan being able to pry into the marvels of this was an inconceivable matter in and of itself. No one had expressed their views on this deep mechanism in the encrypted channel. Cat Eyes, who was beside him, could not even approach the battlefield with her mental senses. Otherwise, she would most likely suffer a backlash. As for Luonan, he was able to do all this easily because of his previous exchange with Fairchild. His thoughts were clear in the domain of the mutual interference of the mental and material planes. But on the other hand, he also vaguely sensed that his family's spiritual senses seemed to be somewhat different from others. He used formatting theory to cultivate his soul strength. In terms of the depth of his clairvoyance, Cat Eyes, Mr. White, and other ability users who specialized in perception and the study of the soul had a faint advantage over him. At the very least, his clairvoyance method had never been successfully tracked by anyone. Ever since he understood the mysteries of soul breathing, he was able to switch between the shallow and deep layers of the mental plane at any time, making it even more difficult for the observed to fathom. In this way, Luonan's special clairvoyance was able to penetrate and analyze a large amount of deep information from what ordinary people saw as ordinary phenomena. This information was then fed back to the configuration of his soul, converging into a unique experience. This experience became the most crucial element for the constant growth of his soul strength. Child once said that nothing was more important than observation. At the very least, this was the truth for enhancers. Luonan personally experienced the advantages of this most critical ability. Speaking of which, he had always treated this as a burden in the past. Fairchild blasted Baze away and strode out the door. The mercury-like glow on his body was the special characteristic of his body and soul interfering structure and operating energy. There were many special structural details that would only truly manifest in battle, and Luonan was fascinated by them. Because of this, Luonan's reaction was especially sharp when this structure was attacked. Fairchild had only walked 3 to 5 steps when he suddenly felt an omen of alarm. He shouted, "Careful." This warning was not aimed at Fairchild. Fairchild knew very well where Fairchild's weaknesses were. Fairchild hoped to endlessly accumulate an advantage on the mental plane to destroy the structural transformation of Fairchild's Shield of Truth. However, Fairchild did not give Fairchild the chance. The area he controlled was as stable as a boulder. On the mental plane, only a little bit emerged from the water's surface. No matter how turbid waves surged, it remained majestically motionless. However, the words of Krite seemed to possess a technique that could extract power from the pain of the surrounding living beings. Could rapidly transform. When the words of Krite was fully activated, every living being in the surroundings could be considered its fulcrum. Luonan's warning was half a beat too late. The words of Krite hissed loudly just as Fairchild's voice fell. The distorted darkness in the room did not ease because of Fairchild's departure. Instead it grew heavier. On the mental plane, the words of Krite rapidly spread and permeated, covering a large area. Cat Eyes let out a muffled groan. She released her mental senses out of habit. It was as if she had been bitten by a venomous snake. Her 5 senses and 6 senses all received an attack. The instant of pain was like pressing her head into a pool of venom. The pain made her body go limp. Yuan directly assigned personnel in the encrypted channel. White salt. Got it. I'll be right there. Bai Xinyan responded. Then she went silent. That person's strength should be above average, but Fairchild could not count on her for the time being. Fortunately, the chains deep within Cat Eyes' body and soul rang out at this time. The attack was greatly neutralized and the pain lessened. Cat Eyes could not help grinding her teeth again. She shot Luonan an ice-cold glance. In the end, she extended her hand and pulled Luonan away. This way. No matter what, they did not dare to go to the main entrance. Fortunately, the 2 firing points from before had pierced through the soundproof wall, giving them room to choose. Luonan still wanted to watch the fight between Fairchild and Baze, but he knew that risking his life to do something like this was truly insensible. He glanced outside the door, but Fairchild's figure was already nowhere to be seen. The problem was Luonan saw Xue Weiluan. Xue Weiluan had rushed to the main entrance. He grabbed the legs of a few unconscious special police officers and dragged them inside. Uncle Xue, you guys go first. Xue Weiluan could not abandon his subordinates and escape by himself no matter what. However, 7 special police officers had just been knocked out by Fairchild. Even though Xue Weiluan had a body of godly strength with the aid of the exoskeleton armor, there was always a limit to what he could carry. It was impossible for him to pile up 7 living people and drag them all in one go. More importantly, Xue Weiluan did not understand the mysteries of this fight. The influence of the words of Krite was constantly probing down from the mental plane. Cat Eyes had already suffered a loss and it would soon affect ordinary people. Xue Weiluan's willpower was extremely strong among ordinary people, but there was still a large gap between him and an ability user. When the time came, he would suffer the same fate as his subordinates, perhaps even more miserable. Cat Eyes hissed and pressed down on her sore scalp. She was helpless against this situation. If this Officer Xue had not used Zhang Yingying's channel to communicate with his son, she would have turned around and left without any pressure. However, after that experience, it would be unjustifiable for him to pretend that he didn't know anything. There are a total of 7 people. They need to run at least 2 rounds. Cat Eyes quickly came to a conclusion. She ordered Luonan, you climb over first. Connect with White Salt. She turned around to help as she spoke, but Luonan pulled her back. Wait. Luonan's body suffused with a weak light the moment he spoke. For the fastest and most accurate novel reading, please visit Chapter 211. Cat Eye's pupils constricted. She was able to sense that Luonan was utilizing his soul strength. However, this magnitude was clearly beyond her scope. Before joining this operation, Yuan had emphasized to her that Luonan was currently undergoing treatment due to the serious imbalance between his body and soul. He couldn't utilize his abilities too much, or else his soul strength would cause serious damage to his nervous system. Luonan had already courted death once before. But back then, Luonan had been communicating with a crazy believer, causing people to overlook the risks involved. But this time, with the precision of Cat Eye's senses, she was able to sense that there were clearly some minute distortions and deformations in many areas of Luonan's nervous system. But what the hell was this light? If Cat Eye saw it, then it meant that everyone else had seen it. Bai Xinyan, who was rushing over, let out a long sigh. With such a willful patient, we doctors are quite troubled. Yuan's stern and severe voice cut in. Mr. Luo, please don't overuse your ability to avoid unexpected consequences. These words were quite serious. Cat Eyes received their warning and grabbed Luonan's shoulder, wanting to stop him. However, in the depths of his body and soul, the chains rattled. His entire body, from the inside to the outside, was trembling slightly, as if he had been electrocuted. His hands stiffened halfway and in the end he couldn't move at all. It was finally here. Cat Eye's heart throbbed. Soon after, her heart was filled with irritation. This was the problem she was most worried about after the operation at Limestone Water Village pub last week. Back then she had collided with Luonan's drawing of the psychic diagram and suffered a backlash. Then she inexplicably fell into Luonan's trap. Her body and soul were pierced by an invisible chain, and she seemed to be imprisoned by some sort of method. But in the following week, Luonan didn't make any strange movements. Even the existence of the chains gradually became undetectable. It just made her nervous and on edge. And in tonight's operation, she and Luonan were within arm's reach. Luonan didn't make any excessive movements. Instead, he used the chains to help her get through several difficulties. Just when Cat Eyes nearly believed that she had misunderstood Luonan, the essence of Luonan's methods was exposed at this critical moment. Right now, she was just like a cat and dog with a chain on it. Its master didn't allow it to move, so it was strangled by the neck and tossed around with all its might. Cat Eyes glared at him with a murderous gaze. It was not an exaggeration at all. She wanted to pounce on Luonan in the next moment and bite his throat. As for using soul force, who cares? Just at this moment, Shui Weiluan's surprised voice rang out. Thanks to Cat Eye's long-range perception ability, she did not need to turn her head to see that each of the 7 special police officers had a set of diagrams materializing on their bodies. It was about the size of a fist. Judging from its shape, it was a tetrahedron with inscribed and circumscribed spheres. Right, it was Luonan's avatar that appeared in the encrypted channel. Cat Eyes was slightly startled. The raging flames in her heart paused for a moment. With just one look, one could tell that this phenomenon was caused by the interference of the spiritual plane with the material plane. According to the theory of the soul, the effectiveness of mutual interference in the mental and material planes was directly proportional to the order. In other words, the more orderly the external representation was, the more effective the soul power would be on the material plane, and the more effective its control would be. Especially when Luonan was doing 7 things at once. He presented 7 sets of diagrams at the same time. Even if each set of diagrams was the same, even if it was just for show. Before she could finish her thought, Cat Eyes sensed the bodies of the unconscious special police officers tremble. It was clear that they were showing signs of regaining consciousness. Cat Eyes finally could not hold back from turning her head. She stared with wide eyes. Shui Weiluan was pleasantly surprised. He finally realized the source of the change in the situation. He turned his head to look. Luonan took a deep breath. He did not make any obvious movements, but the 7 sets of diagrams fluctuated at the same time. Fine vibrations were produced on the mental and material planes. A low buzzing sound seemed to ring in Cat Eye's ears. In that instant, the words of Krite, which had been hissing in their ears all this time, became a bit fuzzy. They never recovered. Immediately, a special police officer let out an "ah," and instinctively sat up. Since there was one, there were 2 more. The special police officers on the ground sat up one by one and turned over. Although they were still confused, the miraculous aspect of this method of awakening their intelligence left Cat Eyes and Shui Weiluan dumbfounded. It wasn't just the 2 present. Zhang Yingying sent a single "ah" in the encrypted channel. She felt that it was impossible to describe her current mood. She simply tossed out a string of dumbfounded emojis and frantically spammed the screen. Ah! Did someone pass on strength to him this week? Or did a certain secretary dual cultivate with him? This rate of progress is illogical. This technique. Before she could finish spamming the last message, she was silently muted by a certain secretary. However, Zhang Yingying's meaning was what the vast majority of people were thinking. Shui Weiluan was a bit better. In any case, he could use his expert abilities to explain things that he did not understand. However, the most painful part for the professionals of the society was that they could not understand things so simply. It must be known that it was always easier to destroy than to build. To instantly knock a conscious person into a comatose state and to instantly wake a comatose person, one was positive while the other was negative. To go from disorder to order, to go from high entropy to low entropy. The difficulty was incomparable. How in the world did Luonan do it? Red Fox and Bamboo Pole had just run to the rendezvous point to rendezvous with Papercut. He was still gasping for breath and nearly choked to death by Luonan's move. He coughed twice before guessing. Child was the one who overturned this group of special police officers, and then Child taught him a rescue technique? How free could Child be? The truly idle Papercut had been sharpening his nails with a piece of paper, but he had forgotten to do so. At this very moment, it was hard for others to see any reason other than the set of diagrams that had seeped into the chest armor of the 7 special police officers. Look at that person's head. It's exactly the same as these 7 diagrams. Alright, he just said something about his grandfather's formatting theory. Does it have anything to do with this? What kind of theory is that? Formatting theory? It was a fantastic idea that had been eliminated by reality a long time ago. It had been a long time since she had heard of it. Bai Xinyan strolled through the empty amusement park. The encrypted channel history loaded into her wristband was being searched through her retina. Papercut's formatting theory just so happened to be the keyword she was searching for. She shrugged her shoulders and laughed involuntarily. Also, the 7 diagrams had attracted the attention of practically everyone. Bai Xinyan was no exception. However, the angle of her attention was a bit different from the others. The tetrahedron, inscribed sphere and circumscribed sphere. It could be considered a very classic example in geometry classes. Its current performance was even more astonishing. However, Bai Xinyan had long since obtained the story of the tetrahedron from an internal report. That scene was much more exciting than its current situation. Soon, Bai Xinyan was able to connect the information she had just obtained with the information she previously knew. Luonan the scout. Oh, he seems to be a psychic. Before they self-destruct, the Luo family found new value in the theory that had been eliminated? Bai Xinyan blinked her eyes, cutting off the information that was constantly refreshing on her retina. She stuffed her hands into the pockets of her windbreaker, pursed her lips, and walked forward at a moderate pace. Looking at Luonan's situation, he is only a step away from his final destruction. Oh, isn't this a bit too wasteful? For the fastest and error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 212. It's a doctor's professional ethics and morality. Bai Xinyan's lips curled into a mocking smile. She refused to let her train of thought continue. She had gained a lot today. What she needed to do now was to play a good role. The next moment, her attention was placed in the direction that a doctor should pay attention to. She watched the video from Cat Eye's shared perspective a few more times. Cat Eyes had been staring at Luonan for some time now. She could see that Luonan's cheeks, forehead, and other areas with dense nerves had a slight twitching sensation. His pupils had dilated and contracted. She could not see anything below his neck, but it was more or less the same. This was a sign that the nervous system had been strongly stimulated. At the same time, that very eye-catching layer of faint light blossomed from inside to outside. The corresponding power filled and supported these densely packed nerves, minimizing the destructive power brought by the strong stimulation of soul power to the greatest extent. Come to think of it, this was the fundamental reason why Luonan was able to use his soul strength without any misgivings. It was also a barrier that temporarily obstructed his path of destruction. Where was his luck? Bai Xinyan made a judgment with the eyes of a doctor. She immediately said in the encrypted channel, "Student Luonan's condition is pretty good right now. Is it thanks to Fairchild's punch?" "Yeah, that punch just now." Luonan didn't want the others to make wild guesses like they were watching a show. He borrowed Bai Xinyan's words to give a clear response. Bai Xinyan commented, "The current performance is similar to Fairchild's Shield of Truth. It should be his blessing. When I was in Luoyang City, I once saw the higher-ups of the Order of Justice leading a team to establish a settlement in the wilderness. Within a radius of 100 meters, all the members of the Order of Justice would receive the blessing of the Shield of Truth. Even if they were attacked by mutants, as long as they were C rank or below, most of them would be able to survive the first attack. It is extremely effective. Right, the Holy Knight Halo effect of the Order increases defense." Zhang Yingying was not silenced for long. She quickly spoke as a veteran gamer. "But this way the effect is only temporary." "Yeah, it's temporary." Luonan gave a simple response, even though the truth wasn't that simple. Yuan felt a headache coming on from the lack of urgency in their conversation. She directly asked Bai Xinyan, "White Salt, report your position." "There's still 40 meters left." I can already see people." Student Luonan's face seems to be glowing right now. "It sells very well." Bai Xinyan stopped. Her gaze passed through the soundproof wall and entered the room that was on the verge of collapse. The light over there was dim, forming a large luminous difference compared to where she was, but it didn't affect her at all. She raised her hand and waved, greeting the people in the private room. Yuan once again issued an order. Everyone in the private room, after rendezvous with White Salt, retreat according to the designated route. A clear evacuation route immediately appeared in the encrypted channel. At the same time, the route map was also displayed in Officer Shue's command data link. The latter was stunned for a moment, but he still sent the map to his subordinates and asked them to act according to the plan. Quick, quick, quick. Bamboo Pole was the one urging him on. He continued to dutifully refresh information. The sniper cannons at Yulon Hotel are about to finish calibrating. Their firing range covers all of Frost River reality. At that time, someone might be out of his mind and ignore Child. If the muzzle tilts up, we'll have to use a mop to collect your corpses. Get lost. I'm talking to you. Cat Eyes was in a terrible mood. She forcefully resisted the evil thought of tearing Luo Nan's throat to shreds. She fiercely pushed Luo Nan, indicating for him to retreat first. Luo Nan could more or less sense Cat Eye's mood. He didn't say much. He leaped over the broken soundproof wall in a few steps and arrived outside. He turned his head and looked inside. The special police under Xue Weiluan were well trained. They quickly discarded their meaningless confusion and followed the plan to cover the evacuation in an orderly manner. Their tactical movements were still standard, although they might not be effective. This is professional ethics. Bai Xinyan expressed her understanding of the special police's actions. Luo Nan's gaze flitted across the face of this carefree and casual beauty. He lowered his eyes and whispered, "Ms. Bai. Hello. Nice to meet you. I have some understanding of you, student Luo Nan." Bai Xinyan winked at him. She looked very cordial and easy to get along with. However, Luo Nan did not forget the 2-hour assignment at the Frost River waterway that she had arranged earlier. Not to mention the burner simulator that was closely related to it. Luo Nan was a bit wary of this beautiful lady. It was because of these thoughts that Luo Nan's gaze turned back and cut across the special police officers. The visualized diagram projected on the chest area of these people's exoskeleton armors had yet to dissipate. It must be said that Luo Nan's move was a bit too high profile. If this scene were to spread out, Yen Yongbo would have a rather unfavorable association with Luo Nan. Luo Nan also considered whether or not he should take back these diagrams. But at this time, a deafening rumble could be heard. The battle between Fairchild and Baze had entered an extremely intense state. The high-end immersion experience area of Frost River reality was rapidly turning into ruins. Fairchild still held an unshakable advantage on the material plane up until now. However, the range of effect of the words of Krite continued to expand. The special ability of the words of Krite to find fulcrums everywhere was too deceptive. Even Cat Eyes had fallen for it. Luo Nan thought for a bit. In the end, he did not take back his blessing. He even added one to Xue Weiluan as a precaution. Bai Xinyan observed with interest. Then she asked, "This move of yours is a bit like our family's old Bai's awakening phonetic interest. It's not just a simple awakening. There's also the flavor of a high-end integration. The method is cautious. Is this a technique of formatting theory? Your family's old Bai?" Luo Nan was stunned for a moment. He then realized that Bai Xinyan was referring to her father, Mr. Bai. From this form of address, it was impossible to tell that they were not on good terms. At the same time, Luo Nan admired Bai Xinyan's eyesight. He really was using the visualized diagram to imbue the rhythm of soul breathing into everyone's bodies, giving them blessings. Bai Xinyan's description was extremely apartment. This kind of lady really gave people a lot of pressure. Luo Nan grew more and more unwilling to converse with Bai Xinyan. It just so happened that a miserable scream came from within the crowd. The scream was sharp and trembling. It was simply the pain of having one's stomach ripped out. Oh, perhaps this was not an exaggeration. Several special police officers had just withdrawn from the room. They hurriedly lowered the body they were carrying. The person's back touched the ground and his entire body curled up into a ball. His face contorted and his mouth gaped wide open. But this time no sound came out. All he could do was smear his face with tears, snot and cold sweat. Wang Bingzhen. It was hard to say whether this fellow had a good life or a bad one. In the end, he was brought out by the professional special police officers. But his current appearance was worse than death no matter how one looked at it. Bai Xinyan was the only one here with the qualifications to practice medicine. But she only swept a glance over Luo Nan before shaking her head. The words of Krite. Right now he's already a snake nest. He's also a type of human-shaped weapon. Perhaps some first ablatum is sizing us up through this person. For the fastest and most error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 213. The unbroken night rain seemed to have no intention of stopping. Instead, it seemed to be intensifying. Standing at the edge of the top floors of the tall buildings, one could see the fine curtains of rain and smoke, as well as the hazy lights of the city. They covered every visible area except for the top floors themselves. The top floors of the 3 buildings that supported Frost River reality were still wet, but there was no rain falling from above. There was an invisible barrier that separated the top floors of the 3 tall buildings from the autumn rainy night of Xia City. This scene only lasted for about 20 minutes. At this time there were more than 10 people bustling about on each floor. Some were moving equipment and some were drawing diagrams on the ground. They shuttled back and forth and it was full of the feeling of haste. And Wang did not care what the people behind him were doing. He just stood quietly at the edge of the tall building. His skinny and short body was wrapped in a ceremonial robe that did not fit his body. He stood at the top of a tall building that was nearly 1,000 meters tall. He let the wind blow and he looked as if he could be blown off at any time. In reality, he stood very steadily. The shadow of his hood covered his face, but a faint light still seeped through his turbid pupils. The light reflected off the triangular flat roof of the building below, and the red and blue lights of police cars dotted all four sides. It was a dazzling sight. Under the chaotic lights, the tide of people endlessly surged out from many emergency passageways and spread out in all directions. They followed the foolish swarming effect and gathered at the outer perimeter. They were like a colony of ants separated by water. They swarmed endlessly. On every floor of the three tall buildings, there were large numbers of people sticking to the glass walls of the buildings. They were using all sorts of recording devices and were in spectator mode. They magnified the emotions of panic, fear, and excitement. They turned into turbid clouds that were hard to see and blended into the autumn rainy night. And Wang's drooping eyelids nearly covered both of his eyes, but in reality, he was watching the roiling miasma with great interest. He savored the various subtleties within. Let alone a few minutes, he would not get tired even if he watched for an entire night. What's more, there was an even more interesting scene within the turbid clouds and miasma. Perhaps some first ablatum is sizing us up through this person. The conversation within Frost River reality was clearly transmitted back to him. And Wang laughed involuntarily. It was just as the other side said. He borrowed the snake nest and used his mental clairvoyance to sweep over the faces of everyone around him. One was the woman in the trench coat who had pointed out the snake nest, and the other was the young man who had been blessed by Child's escape of truth. They're all extraordinary people. His mouth moved slightly as he evaluated. The lady in the trench coat had good eyesight and knowledge, and the depth of her abilities was hard to fathom. The psychic waves projected by the snake nest were actually unfathomable. She was at least a B-rank combatant. As for that young man, before he could finish his thought, the scene displayed by the snake nest psychic wave scan suddenly became blurry and distorted. Then it completely collapsed. It was obvious that the snake nest he had just built had been destroyed, and Wang was slightly startled. Following which, his shriveled lips slightly parted, revealing a gap that was like a black hole. It could be considered a smile. Interfering with the operation of the words of Krite, not yielding an inch. Your soul power is impressive, and your spirit is full of vigor. Very good, very good. Just as Wang was looking at the scenery and judging the people, there was a black-robed man standing on the landing pad in the middle of the two roofs that were a few hundred meters away from the building he was on. These two were also wearing the attire of first ablatums, but they did not dare to leave their positions to view the scenery like Wang. Instead, they were very solemnly arranging the people around them. Whether it was drawing on the spot or transporting equipment, they were all carefully arranged and compared. They could not afford to make the slightest mistake. However, as the arrangements gradually became more and more appropriate, the two first ablatums found it increasingly difficult to calm down. As experienced first ablatums of the order, they were both well versed in the relevant knowledge and knew Child inside out. Of course, they could determine the odds of success in the upcoming conflict. The two of them communicated through the air for a moment. Finally, they could not help but ask Wang for instructions in unison. They walked on the mental plane that his subordinates could not perceive. The one in charge of communication was first ablatum Zheng Xiao, whose position was just below Wang's. Wang, setting up the formation this way is fast, but it's ultimately a stopgap measure. It's too hasty and it's hard to see full effect. According to our current estimates, the chances of us three first ablatums killing Child, even with the coordination of the formation diagram, do not exceed 30%. This is too risky. Should we reconsider? Wang did not immediately respond. He extended his two hands. His muscles and bones were exposed and they were speckled with spots. They were filled with the smell of age and decay. They were even trembling slightly. His thumb and index finger, which could no longer be extended, separated and pressed against each other. They formed a triangle, attempting to encompass all of Frost River reality. Why kill Child? Why kill Child? Wang asked again, haven't you had any doubts from the start of the operation until now? Or could it be that Child has ruined so many of your plans in Xia City over the years that you view him as an enemy? Is it only right and proper for you to take any action against him? The two first ablatums were somewhat dumbfounded. You were the one who proposed to kill child, right? Now you're blaming us for not questioning, not speaking, and for seeking personal gain? Fortunately, Jing Xiao had worked together with An Wang for many years. He knew An Wang's temperament, so he went along with An Wang's tone and said, An Wang, we actually have our concerns. After all, child is an important figure on that side. He is the backbone of the most promising extraordinary. If things go wrong, the secular side and the truth side will completely shed all pretense of cordiality. This is something we do not wish to see. The two ends of the scale should maintain their distance. They should not interfere with each other and point fingers at each other. An Wang adjusted the angle of his finger bit by bit, but he directly determined child's nature. Therefore, child is not of the truth side. He is just an extremist, a paranoid, and an executioner. There should not be a place for him in the order. Jing Zhao's heartstrings trembled. So you want to eliminate him? This way, according to An Wang, dealing with child was not just a request from their side. Instead, it had to be done in a more complex and callous context. But if this is the case, we should have a better opportunity. We should have a more leisurely plan, An Wang responded calmly. In terms of probability, any plan against a powerful person like child has no more than a 50% chance of success. Other than meticulous planning, there is more of luck involved. Today's luck is good. The terrain, information, energy, and even an excuse are all in place. Why not give it a try? Give it a try? Jing Xiao smiled bitterly. I'm afraid we can't bear the consequences if we don't succeed. If they did not kill the tiger, there would be endless trouble in the future. If they really angered child, it would lead to crazy revenge. The secular first ablatums would probably have to sleep with their eyes open. Just the thought of it made them go crazy. What consequences can there be? An Wang coughed twice and turned around. He slowly walked toward the area where the array had been set up. The gate of truth is about to open. Even if that paranoid person is alive, can he be distracted? Stuck. Only one chapter today. Sorry. For the fastest and error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 214. Jing Xiao was speechless for a moment. Only when An Wang was in position and the array diagrams on the 3 floors began to adjust and operate did Jing Xiao come to his senses. Are you joking, An Wang? Currently, there was news circulating within the order that the gate of truth was about to open. It was said that one could see the true form of the holy relic, the scales of truth, through this mystical gate. They could unlock the highest authority and obtain supreme wisdom. As the first ablatum in charge of local missionary matters, Jing Xiao knew very well that this was the product of some priests using the recent earthquake in Xia City as a guide to spread their religion. They borrowed a few words from the scriptures of the church and used them as inspiration. They fabricated this rumor, claiming that the location of the Gate of Truth was near Xia City. The earthquakes that had occurred for many days were the result of the holy relic constantly approaching the material world, causing interference. Every year, the priests of the secular side of the Order of Justice would come up with similar rumors to attract believers and expand the influence of the order. Jing Xiao had long since grown accustomed to this sight. It just so happened that the Order of Justice had seized the lead in analyzing and utilizing the human-faced arachnid. They had made considerable progress in their research and were about to launch a new product of faith. Jing Xiao wanted to ride on the momentum and did not place any restrictions on these rumors. How could An Wang believe such a groundless rumor? How could he tie up Fairchild's hands and feet? The old man's brain is muddled. Another first ablatum and Qingli sent a message through a private channel. Jing Xiao did not go along with this. Although in Qingli's words were rude, he was An Wang's grandnephew. He usually put on an honest and upright face and relied on insulting his own elders to get along with others. God knows what his own family members were saying behind his back. Plus, Jing Xiao did not believe that there was a problem with An Wang's brain at all. An Wang was a secret-bound first ablatum, but he was older than 99% of the Heartseer first ablatums. It was just that he was too old when he received the revelation of the holy relic. His fleshly body could not bear it, limiting his accomplishments. Even so, the various priests, first seats, and even the Lord Archiblatum had to address him as An Wang. Over time they even forgot his real name. An Wang had never disgraced this respectful title. Perhaps this old man, who was over 100 years old, had an unbearably decrepit body, but his understanding of the situation and his thoughts were clear and deep. He far surpassed these clear-sworn first ablatums. At the very least, Jing Xiao was ashamed of his inferiority. He could not help but think further. Was there some deeper meaning in An Wang's words? Jing Xiao recalled the relevant records. According to the Holy Bible of the Church, the opening of the Gate of Truth was the beginning of the change of the world. Last time, it was the aberrations that swept across the globe, completely changing the Earth's ecology and breaking the shackles of humanity's potential, bringing a revelation to the human world. The next opening of the Gate of Truth would undoubtedly change the direction of the human world once again. As for whether it would be prosperity or destruction, the canon did not specify. No matter what direction it took, how earth-shattering was this? If the news was true, then the upper echelons of the order would have exploded a long time ago. The first seat of the Sacred Hall of Justice, the various illuminating First Oblatums, the High Oblatums, and even the elusive Lord Archoblatum would have pushed aside all obstructions and gathered in Xia City. A storm had already surged in this place. How could the current situation be the same? Oh wait. If it was the Gate of Truth, if Xia City was truly in turmoil, what benefits would the Order of Justice gain? As the saying goes, pull one hair and the whole body moves. If such a huge scene were to occur, would they just wait for the government, the military, the ability user society, or other financial powers to share the fruits of their labor? Zheng Xiao suddenly shivered as his thoughts reached this point. Although he was wearing a thick black robe, his entire body still trembled unconsciously. This was not fear but the sudden excitement and pressure. Anwang, are you saying that the Gate of Truth really exists? Is this true or false? And Qingli forgot to push Zheng Xiao in front of him to block the arrow. He could not help but interject. Why isn't there any news from the upper echelons? Even if there was news, it wouldn't be for people of your level to know. Zheng Xiao had always suspected that Anwang knew that his greatest strength was his self-awareness. That was why he transferred him over to form a team with Qingli, a young First Oblatum whose ambitions exceeded his abilities. However, even though Qingli had 1,000 faults, his brain was not stupid. He immediately fired off a barrage of questions. Anwang, did the Lord Archoblatum have a sacred decree? If the Gate of Truth is truly about to open, do we have a grasp on the time and place? Could today's matter be just a reason? Yes, could it be just a reason? Jing Xiao was a bit uncertain for a time. If it really was what they meant by repairing the plank road in the open but crossing the Tsang road in the dark, they could borrow the conflict and internal strife between them and Fairchild to allow the secular side and the truth side of the order to converge in Xia City in large numbers, forming an absolute advantage. Then what were their current arrangements? Sometimes Qingli was truly the best partner, especially when his brain was burning. He seized the opportunity to voice out Zheng Xiao's doubts. If it really is like this, then we've all become the stage set? If Fairchild really is someone who can coordinate with us, then what credibility does this reason have? Anwang had only answered one question, but he had clarified many matters. Zheng Xiao and Qingli were both silent. They needed time to digest everything. The night rain grew heavier and heavier. Even the rooftops, which were shielded from the rain, could still hear the sound of falling raindrops. Anwang did not give the two too much time to think. Soon the mental domains of the two shuddered. Black light and white threads interweaved, and a classical hanging scale appeared in the depths of the void where it was difficult for the eyes of ordinary people to see. It announced its existence to the two. The black and white plates were placed on each side, and each had 3 chains of the same color hanging from them. The central frame was a strict contrast, and the base below was heavy and heavy. Aside from this, there were no other superfluous decorations. It was simple and plain. This was the projection of the scales of truth. It was the paramount sacred object of the order. No matter when, where, or what form it appeared, one needed to display a respectful attitude. The 2 First Oblatums bowed at the same time and silently chanted the scriptures, temporarily washing away the distracting thoughts in their minds. At this moment, the scales of truth were not in a balanced state. The white plate was like a heavy weight. It sank to the bottom, causing the black plate on the other side to rise high. It gave people the feeling that it would topple over in the next moment. This unbalanced state was often the starting symbol of a powerful incantation of the order. Every method after that was to bring the unbalanced state back to a balanced state. They would obtain inconceivable and mysterious power in the process. However, the state of the scales of truth this time was somewhat strange. The white plate that sank was completely empty. At the very least, no heavy object could be seen. On the contrary, there was a small snake the thickness of a chopstick on the other side of the black plate. Its body was coiled around the plate, and its mouth was biting the snake's tail. Turbid clouds roiled around its body. This little snake biting its own tail was the materialization of the words of Christ. It symbolized the negative power of pain that they controlled within Frost River reality. It was also the only counterweight that needed to be constantly adjusted in the later stages of the game to achieve balance. However, from the looks of the unbalanced state, its weight seemed to be rather insufficient. It seems that the operation of the words of Krite is not smooth. Actually, Jing Xiao wanted to ask which sacrifice was placed on the truth side, the white plate. And Qingli said, the absorption of the Krite is constantly being disrupted. Could it be that the ability users inside are up to no good? And Wang declined to comment. Let's take a look. For the fastest and most error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 215. And Wang gave the order. Whether it was Jing Xiao or Qingli, both of them had to instantly gather their thoughts and take their respective positions. At this time, the equipment on the roofs of the 3 buildings had already been installed and turned on at the same time. The one that occupied the core function was a special 3D projector. In an instant, 5 colored rays of light shot out, interweaving into countless layers of ever-changing structures. The complex array diagram that would normally take several hours to arrange was presented in the form of a projection. These scattered rays of light had all been specially processed to carry a certain amount of energy. If an ordinary person was exposed to this light, they would have been burned on the spot. However, under the control of the 3 first ablatums, not a single bit of the energy within the rays of light was wasted. They converged into the various basic structures of the array diagram and temporarily fused together with their respective auras. Every first ablatum seemed to be wrapped in a cocoon of light. Within the inner layer of the cocoon of light, the basic runes of the demonic curse were arranged in order to construct a single spiral chain-like structure. It revolved around the body and formed the inner ring of the foundation. On this foundation, countless arcs radiated outwards, intertwining with the multi-pointed stars on the outer layer. They cleverly pieced together to form several dozen relatively independent gear structures of different sizes. Bit by bit, they were like an enormous machine. It rumbled and hummed as it operated. The outermost spherical boundary was formed from several dozen to over 100 ring-shaped arrays. The dim and slightly gray light was like rapidly flowing muddy water. It swished as it flowed. It seemed as if it could break through the canal and overflow at any time. However, it also obtained a powerful tension from this. Just like this, the 3 roofs of the 3 buildings had nearly identical magic arrays. They formed an equilateral triangular structure with bright ends and shapeless edges. The structure had a name. It was the evolution field. It was jointly constructed by the 3 first ablatums. It was a wondrous land that they all shared. Of course, as the secret-bound first ablatum, and Wang certainly had a higher level of authority. He also occupied a dominant position. In the center of the evolution field, the scales of truth that were in an unbalanced state were reflected. At this time, even though it had yet to reach the material plane, it had already entered the visual range of the surrounding believers. Immediately, these priests and members of the Order of Knights knelt down in accordance with the order's etiquette. More or less, their hearts of piety and reverence converged into the array diagram. They transformed into specific information and intersected with the energy, making it more active. The activated magic array was gradually gaining control over the surrounding area. The most direct change was the range of detection. None of the 3 first ablatums specialized in mental senses. They were separated by a kilometer in a straight line. If they wanted to understand the current situation of Frost River reality, they would need to use the words of Krite to form a snake nest or use a humanoid weapon like Baze as a fulcrum. But now, within the evolution field that the 3 of them shared, the information gathered by Frost River reality, no matter how numerous and complex it was and how thousands of strands it was sorted out and gathered within this triangular structure. In the end, it took shape and was projected into the souls of the 3 first ablatums. The image went from blurry to clear, covering an area of about 100 square meters, showing all the creatures in it. Moreover, under the effect of some special mechanism, the image was automatically focused, placing the most important person in the center and marking it. Although the location of the target wasn't much different. It was a child who appeared to be only 15 or 16 years old. He was dressed casually and looked like a student who came to Frost River reality to play on the weekends. Among the people who were traveling with him, any one of them was a member of society who was a lot older than him. But at this time, the group of people who were cautiously walking around unconsciously surrounded the young man in the center. 8 tall and sturdy special police officers wearing exoskeleton armors held guns and shields. They naturally formed a defensive formation. They looked like they were escorting a high-ranking official. Is that him? Jing Xiao and Qingli were a bit surprised. And Wang still did not speak. The information gathering and analysis of the evolution field did not stop here. Many special symbols and markings from within the order were sprinkled down. Everyone had a share. The parts that needed special attention were clearly marked in an eye-catching manner. The three first ablatums saw that those parts were astonishingly similar. They were exactly the same. They all appeared on everyone's chest. They all had the same form of existence and the same composition. Tetrahedron, inscribed sphere, circumscribed sphere. This is the archetype format. As a qualified clear-sworn first ablatum, Qingli had an understanding of the extraordinary theories of the various powers. Naturally, he would not forget the archetype format theory that was currently the hottest topic in the world. Jing Xiao hesitated for a moment but still made a correction. The archetype format is the standard method of strengthening the fleshly body. The current situation should be the product of the mental interfering with the material plane. Qingli choked and wanted to say more. But at this time Wang finally clearly transmitted his thoughts. The words of Kreit's operation is obstructed. This young man is the direct cause. He is not old but he already possesses considerable soul power. Moreover, the operation method is cautious. He naturally belongs to the side of order. Not too long ago, he received the blessing of Fairchild's Shield of Truth. Fairchild? Shield of Truth. Jing Xiao and Qingli were fiercely shocked. What relationship does he have with Fairchild? Who cares what relationship he has? And Wang's thoughts were still indifferent. Right now we only need to know that Fairchild has blessed this young man. This young man's blessing is even more generous. Wherever he goes, the power of chaos and disorder will be restricted. Do you have any information on this young man? Of course, the Order had informants in the Ability User Society. They might not be able to touch upon some deep information, but they could always find basic information that was placed on the surface. It didn't take long for the three first ablatums to get to know this young man all over again. And Wang did not conceal his special attitude toward this young man at all. Luo Nan is a young man who has just joined the Order. A young man with boundless prospects. A young man without too much background. This is the power of talent. If we had met him a few years ago, we could have brought him into the Order and carefully trained him. Perhaps he could have contended for a holy disciple's seed. Jing Zhao's heart stirred. And Qingli had contended for a holy disciple, time and time again in the past. He was unsuccessful, so he sadly returned to Xia City and became the clear-sworn first ablatum. He had always brooded over this. And Wang's words. Separated by several hundred meters of the night sky, he could not see in Qingli's expression. But then Wang issued an order. Qingli. And Wang. The secular side is not the secular world. We set the rules for the secular world. Therefore, when we act, we need to find a reason. We also need to make our attitude clear. And Wang. Jing Xiao could hear an ominous taste in his words. He could not help but want to warn Wang. However, Qingli had already been struck to the core by a few words from his granduncle. He was put on the stage. He responded practically without thinking, "And Wang, please instruct me. We need to make it clear to the world that the Order is different from the scattered ability user society. We are also different from those politicians who believe in trickery. We have our principles. We absolutely will not compromise. Those who rashly interfere with the Order's internal affairs must pay the price. Right now you are the judge. Make your verdict." For the fastest and most error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 216. Ever since Luo Nan walked out of the room, he did not feel too good. After rendezvousing with Bai Xinyan, the route they were currently taking was precisely the area that the Order of Justice's firepower had recently passed through. As he walked through the empty amusement park, everything he saw was a mess. The ground was littered with helmets and equipment thrown down by the panic-stricken tourists. Occasionally, they would come across corpses that had been destroyed by the kinetic energy of the enormous bullets. The automatic sprinkler equipment above their heads had already been turned on. It was raining inside the amusement park. After the flesh and blood had been smeared on the ground, faint red blood flowed beneath their feet. This scene was hard to imagine for the people who had been stuck in the room. At the very least, Luo Nan never imagined that he would see Frost River reality like this. At this time he had to constantly repeat those meaningless words. "Yes, don't worry. I'm fine. I'm really fine. I'm with the special police. I'm very safe. Don't worry." The person talking to him was none other than Emochio, whose legs had already turned to jelly. When Luo Nan led the special police back into Frost River reality, Emochio did not stop them. He was considering that Luo Nan was acquainted with the police officer. If Luo Nan could establish a good relationship with Luo Nan, it would be easier to plead for leniency for Mo Peng and the others. Who knew that a dozen or so minutes after entering the amusement park, news of a terrorist attack and the special police being knocked down would spread. Then came the sound of gunshots. All of Frost River reality was in an uproar. Mo Chio and the others were brought to the periphery by the chaotic flow of people. They wanted to contact Luo Nan, but no one picked up their calls. Mo Chio was so shocked that his soul left his body. Then he considered that if he were to continuously call Luo Nan under special circumstances, it might bring trouble to Luo Nan. He was in a dilemma, tormented to the point of insanity. Finally, Luo Nan noticed the missed call on his wristband while he was moving from the room. He dialed it and Mo Chio's burning chest finally cooled down. Once a person's pressure was released, it was inevitable that they would chatter endlessly. Luo Nan patiently chatted with Mo Chio for a few rounds. From this, he gained some understanding of the situation outside. After the so-called terrorist attack, the police set up a blockade around Frost River reality and evacuated the surrounding citizens. Everyone believed that the police would quickly rush into Frost River reality to control the situation. But who would have thought that after gathering hundreds of people, the police were still hesitating at the periphery? They only sent some combat robots and unmanned aerial vehicles to enter. From time to time they would rescue a few trapped citizens or carry them out. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Apart from a few corpses, there was no other movement, causing many people to be dissatisfied. Luo Nan nodded when he heard how the police handled the matter. Yes, this is correct. Frost River reality was currently enveloped by the power of the Order of Justice's words of Krite. Any living creature that entered would likely be reduced to a snake nest, becoming a helper for the Order of Justice. The police had obviously been instructed to do so. Mo Chio didn't understand. Master. Luo Nan had no way of explaining these things to Mo Chio. He just said, Mo Peng and the others have already been taken to the police station, right? That way they'll be safer. Third brother Yu, senior sister Xiaolin, senior sister Tian, and the others should quickly retreat. The further the better. I just heard from an insider that this group of terrorists might be carrying weapons of mass destruction. Ah. Don't speak carelessly like this. Shui Weiluan heard Luo Nan spouting nonsense and hurriedly stopped him. Luo Nan made an apologetic gesture to Shui Weiluan and continued to explain to Mo Chio, I'm following the special forces. I might evacuate in another direction. You guys don't need to worry about me. Just go as far as you can. Also, don't tell your family about this for now. Do you think that's possible? Mo Chio laughed bitterly in the end. Right now the cameras of the entire world are pointed at you guys. Luo Nan ended the call with Mo Chio. He could not help but imagine the rescue and corpses that Mo Chio spoke of. An indescribable feeling of discomfort assaulted him once more. He could not help but let out another sigh. Shui Weiluan saw that Luo Nan had ended the call and walked over to remind him a second time. Luo Nan, it's true that you are an expert but your family members are not. Their endurance is different. You can't guarantee that they won't spread the news outside and be used by others. Luo Nan just wanted Mo Chio to take this seriously and quickly retreat. Comparing the words of Krite to a weapon of mass destruction was not too out of line. However, Shui Weiluan was an elder. Luo Nan obediently complied when he said this. Shui Weiluan had only said this out of professional habit. Actually, he had seen Luo Nan display the miraculous protective diagram technique and associated it with this young man's identity as an expert. It was inevitable that he would have some misgivings. Shui Weiluan saw that Luo Nan was still able to maintain the respectful attitude of a junior. His cultivation was extraordinary. Shui Weiluan's inherent impression of Luo Nan as a drug addict was immediately diluted. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Many people had a favorable impression of Luo Nan. Shui Weiluan did not want to leave behind any sort of stereotypical impression for his son's good friend. He just so happened to have some unresolved doubts, so he resolved them all at once. He reached out with his hand and drew 2 strokes on the half-covered, incorporeal diagram on his chest. Visible light waves rippled in the air. The diagram slightly warped and deformed before returning to normal. This diagram can defend against mental attacks, right? How long can it last? What's it called again? Format pyramid. Just call it that, uncle. Luo Nan laughed. It's a bit of an exaggeration to say that it can defend against mental attacks. It can only be said that it can avoid interference on the mental plane. If we encounter a direct attack, there will be a buffer to allow us time to react. Luo Nan looked at the chests of the group of people around him as he spoke. They were all supported by his format pyramid. Luo Nan felt a bit more at ease in his heart. His voice became a lot clearer. As for how long it can last, as long as I stand here, there won't be any problems. Student Luo Nan, are you sure that you are fine? Someone spoke before Luo Nan's words fell to the ground. The emphasis fell on the second you, implying something. The speaker was none other than Bai Xinyan. This medical doctor had been looking at her wristband with her head lowered the entire time ever since the group of people had followed their retreat route. It seemed that she was looking up information. She turned a blind eye to everything around her. Now that she had opened her mouth with great difficulty, it seemed like she was undermining Luo Nan. Ms. Bai. Luo Nan suddenly became speechless halfway through his words. This was because Bai Xinyan had moved a bit closer at this time. She extended her arm, half pressing and half hugging him. She wrapped her arm around his shoulder and walked forward just like that. Her posture was ambiguous, drawing the sidelong glances of many people to the side. Luo Nan clearly knew that Bai Xinyan didn't mean it that way. But when Bai Xinyan's arm wrapped around him, their bodies pressed together, and he felt the indescribable softness on his shoulder, his body unconsciously stiffened. Light touches qualified. And then Bai Xinyan not only wrapped her arm around his shoulder, she even used her other hand to lightly pull his neck. She looked at the back of his ear and the side of his neck. The warmth of her fingertips seeped into Luo Nan's skin, and the throbbing of Luo Nan's blood vessels and nerves were fed back to her by her fingertips. There's only one update today. The next update is tomorrow morning at around 8 o'clock. Last month I lost my moral standing. I suffered the wrath of heaven during the holidays. I'm working overtime and I'm stuck. That woman has a problem at work. It's a complete mess. I don't dare to say anything. I need to find my rhythm first. Chapter 217. Hey, are you going to take another bite next? Zhang Yingying couldn't help but shout. Bai Xinyan and Luo Nan were doing shady deals through Cat Eye's shared perspective. The members of the society in the encrypted channel could all see it clearly. In the end, Luo Nan was thin-skinned. He instinctively wanted to struggle when he heard this, but Bai Xinyan's finger on his neck suddenly felt warm and then cold. The speed of the change was so fast that Luo Nan might not have been able to tell if it wasn't for his training in the Frost River waterway and his sensitivity to heat and cold sensors. It was because he was able to tell clearly that the two completely opposite stimuli made him shiver uncontrollably. At this moment, the other hand that landed on his shoulder blade also began to exert force. It was fine at first. It was just a simple pressure. But later, even with the support of the Shield of Truth, Luo Nan felt his muscles, bones, and skin move under Bai Xinyan's fingertips. The pain assaulted him and he couldn't help but frown. Ms. Bai. Luo Nan nearly jumped up in the next moment because Bai Xinyan's finger, which had been on his neck, suddenly slid down along his collar to touch his chest. Wow! A wave of exclamations filled the encrypted channel. The vigilant special police officers couldn't help but look over. Even though Bai Xinyan was a great beauty who could make one's heart beat faster, Luo Nan couldn't stand this routine. His right shoulder was pressed down and his arm was powerless. He could only raise his left hand and firmly press down on Bai Xinyan's slender hand that had slid down to his chest through his clothes. But when he raised his arm and bent his elbow, the tip of his elbow collided with Bai Xinyan's body behind him. It seemed to have collided in the wrong place. Luo Nan's body froze again. And at this time Bai Xinyan's laughing voice rang in his ear. Pressure, pain, and temperature are all fine. Nothing abnormal can be seen in your body. Your movements were automatic and your sense of balance was very accurate. Not bad. As she spoke, Bai Xinyan pulled away from him as if nothing had happened. It was as if nothing had happened. Only now did Luo Nan realize that Bai Xinyan was doing a functional test on him. But what did she mean by doing this all of a sudden? I just looked up some information. Targets that receive the support of the Shield of Truth will have a substantial increase in defensive power. But if they endure it for a long time, they will often have problems afterward. This chapter is not complete. Please continue. Dislocation of muscles and bones, nerve damage and other symptoms. Research believes that the power of the Shield of Truth, while supporting the structure of the human body, also creates distortions. Or perhaps, it numbs the senses of the person receiving the blessing, making it impossible for them to accurately grasp the limits of the body. But from what I can see so far, student Luo Nan, you haven't shown any of these symptoms. Is Child's iron fist of love more exquisite? The encrypted channel was filled with oh sounds of sudden realization, but how many of them could really listen to this explanation? Luo Nan recovered from his awkwardness, but he could not help but admire Bai Xinyan's judgment. It seemed to match the reality of the situation completely. The only thing she had overlooked was the effect Luo Nan himself had played in this blessing. Back when Fairchild punched Luo Nan, he injected the power of the mental and the material into Luo Nan's body, covering his entire body. This blessing was exquisite to the point of being inconceivable. It seemed to seep into every cell of Luo Nan's body. Under the infiltration of this heavy power, the millions and millions of basic units within Luo Nan's body were strengthened layer by layer. They were also slightly distorted and dislocated. It was the same as taking some of the powerful basic structures of the Shield of Truth and reflecting them into Luo Nan's body. This caused the endurance of Luo Nan's fleshly body to increase dramatically. Bai Xinyan's judgment up to this step was correct. It could be assumed that a normal target receiving the blessing would not be able to receive this preferential treatment on the cellular level. However, the reason why Fairchild's strength exertion was so exquisite and only strengthened on the basic level was to give Luo Nan room for further control. Any other person would be stupefied for a period of time when faced with the exquisite structure of the Shield of Truth. It was already quite good for Luo Nan to follow the rules and regulations. However, Luo Nan had just received Fairchild's demonstration not too long ago. He was not clear on the particularly subtle details, but he could not be clearer on the basic concepts. Therefore, when Luo Nan unleashed his soul strength, he very naturally and very boldly utilized these basic structures. He used his soul configuration as a reference and combined it with the My Heart's a Prison format formed from 5 years of taking medicine and visualizing. He underwent a second transformation, constructing a configuration outline that was more suitable for him. Luo Nan was still making fine adjustments to this configuration outline up until now, in order to seek a more harmonious and consistent state. Naturally, such precise operations would not cause the state shown in Bai Xinyan's data to appear. Only, this chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Unfortunately, this sort of adjustment was temporary. It was a temporary transformation under the blessing of the Shield of Truth. Once the effect wore off, it would return to its original state. This point was similar to what Bai Xinyan had said. Luo Nan already understood Bai Xinyan's intentions, but her method still made Luo Nan brood over it. The heat on his face had yet to completely fade. He spoke a bit louder in order to conceal it. I just said that there's no problem. I was the one who asked White Salt to confirm it. Mr. Luo, don't blame her. Yuan was the one who responded. Moreover, it was not in the encrypted channel. It was a direct sound wave transmission. Luo Nan was a bit stunned. He raised his head to look forward and saw Yuan, still dressed in her professional attire. She stood within the hazy mist that sprinkled down from the ceiling. She bowed slightly to him. Her body was still dry and cool under the cover of the mist. It was as if there was an incorporeal power isolating her from external contamination. However, when her gaze pierced through the mist and arrived at his side, Luo Nan clearly felt a thin layer of haze hidden within her originally clear and bright pupils. It was hard for Luo Nan to be angry at this female secretary who had always given him selfless assistance. He shook his head, but Yuan spoke before he could say anything. My next mission will be a bit more troublesome. If Mr. Luo can temporarily possess a stronger endurance after receiving the blessing of the Shield of Truth, he will be able to fully display his abilities. This will reduce the difficulty of the mission by quite a bit. Luo Nan's eyes lit up. He was just about to ask when Zhang Yinying was even more excited than him in the encrypted channel. Oh, are you going to start scribbling? Wait a bit. I'll be right there. Hey, it looks like you didn't bring that black book. Do you want me to find a pen and paper, a flexible screen or something? There's a supermarket right next to me. Leister, go. See if there are any high-end brands. Take 2. Shui Lei, who was traveling with her, was certainly embarrassed. It was quite a while before he faintly replied, Are you really going to take them? Luo Nan was also baffled. Zhang Yinying had an even more excited appearance than him. What the hell was going on? However, Yuan rejected Zhang Yinying's conjecture. No. What I need right now is Mr. Luo's all-encompassing perception and long-range strike abilities. Chapter 218. All-encompassing sensing? Kitty, someone is going to steal your job. Zhang Yinying chattered happily. Luo Nan participated in the society's operations with the identity of a scout. His identity was classified, so he did not reveal it to the public. However, it was impossible to be completely impenetrable within the society. At the very least, it was impossible to hide it from people like Zhang Yingying. She did not find it strange that Luo Nan possessed this ability. It was just that she did not directly expose his identity as a scout. But He Yuan was the one who strongly advocated the secret setting of missions. She took the initiative to blur the boundary between Luo Nan and a scout. It was somewhat unusual. Zhang Yingying would not let this opportunity slip by. She immediately sent He Yuan a private message. "Hey, you knowingly break the law." This time He Yuan did not respond at all. Luo Nan was a bit surprised, but he was more concerned about He Yuan's request. Speaking of which, ever since he met this secretary, this was the first time she had given him a mission so clearly instead of a protective restriction. It made him a bit eager. He Yuan spoke softly. "Bamboo Pole, report the situation at Frost River Reality." "Okay." Bamboo Pole responded lazily. "According to the secretary's request, I'll send everyone a picture." As they spoke, a fully labeled real-time dynamic map was released in the encrypted channel. It was a remodeled map of Frost River Reality's elevation structure. It was translucent and very clear. The secretary, Yingying, and student Shuelei have already cleaned up Frost River Reality. The military and police battle machines have already entered the scene. Most areas have been cleaned up, but there are still some areas that cannot be controlled. From the search of the surveillance system, there are still around 5 to 7 gunmen of the order. Most of them are concentrated at the junction of Area A and Area B, controlling the external passageways. At the same time, they are under the protection of bays and the other humanoid weapons. The red dot on the dynamic map is the one. Luo Nan looked very attentively. He took the initiative to ask, "How many are there like bays?" Cough. "Boss Luo, there is only one humanoid weapon like bays. If there were 2 more, you wouldn't have been able to leave the room alive." Bamboo Pole had to correct Luo Nan's misconceptions. However, there are slightly inferior humanoid weapons. They are the Ablatum Knights of the Knights of Equity. Xia City only has a small team. Including bays, there are a total of 9 people. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Since they were after Fairchild, they should all be here, or at least half of them. They should be near the area where Fairchild and bays were fighting. The problem is that even if these people didn't merge with the first Ablatum's power, they are still equivalent to C+ level ability users. Purely relying on the monitoring system, it is extremely difficult for us to detect their existence. In other words, you want me to find all these people? Luo Nan didn't feel that this mission was that difficult, but there was one thing he didn't understand. A C+ rank ability user. How powerful are they? Bamboo Pole found a reference for him. The secretary's entry assessment is C+, which is probably the highest level of an awakened. Luo Nan drew in a breath of cold air. He had seen He Yuan fight many times. That kind of swift and fierce rhythm made people feel that even if it was a thick steel wall, she could still cut through it with one slash. With He Yuan's strength, there were 8 or 9 of them at once. Of course, the highest level of the association's assessment can only be C+. I personally believe that the secretary's strength should be able to reach B+. Speaking of which, Boss Luo, your entry evaluation is only E+, which is a serious underestimation. Thanks. Luo Nan expressed his thanks to Bamboo Pole, but he still couldn't figure out how to calculate the strength of a C+ rank. Perhaps the only people who were more confused than him were Shui Weiluan and a few other special police officers outside the circle. Bamboo Pole simply switched to another reference. Then let's take Yingying for example. Her strength is only at C, but her white rainbow has an attack power that can reach the C+ level. Zhang Yingying's image flashed in Luo Nan's mind, and he let out a breath. That's good. You with the surname Luo, why don't you stick your dog head out and try? Zhang Yingying's furious voice came from far away. Her snow-white long legs swayed, stomping on the water as she came over. Her imposing manner was oppressive, causing the special police officers on guard to move out of the way one after another, making a path for her. Luo Nan went, Only then did he realize that his mouth had been a bit too fast. Though his impression of Zhang Yingying had always been complicated, she had given him a secret warning tonight. She had asked for pen and paper, and her attitude was extremely good. Those few words really weren't quite appropriate. Dad, are you all right? Shuelei, who was following closely behind Zhang Yingying, was extremely excited to see his dad. He rushed forward, but in the blink of an eye, an armored fist smashed into his head. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. His body immediately became shorter by half a length. Seeing his friend end up like this, Luonan was really worried that his head would be imitated by Zhang Yingying's white rainbow pierces the sun. He hurriedly raised his hand in apology. I'm sorry. Oh Yingying, your white rainbow feels a lot sharper. Zhang Yingying sneered, it's too late to kiss ass now. Luonan spread his hands, feeling a bit helpless. The heavens took pity on him. He really was speaking the truth. When he looked over just now, he discovered that Zhang Yingying's cloud ribbons, which flowed endlessly on her body, had never been so clear and transparent since he met her. It was as if there really was a stream of flowing water winding around her body, reflecting a cold light. Because of this change, he nearly spilled the beans just now, exposing the fact that he could look directly at the white rainbow. He was able to guess that Zhang Yingying should have made a breakthrough in her abilities in the past week. That was why such an obvious change had appeared. She had just made some progress, but she was denied by a single sentence from him. Anyone would be anxious. Luckily, Shuelei couldn't stand his father's lecture at this time. He came over with a face full of dirt and grime to take refuge, indirectly covering for Luonan. He came up and gave Luonan a heavy hug. Nanster, thank you so much. I just heard my dad say that it's all thanks to you being there. Actually, Uncle has always been taking care of me. Luonan's attitude was naturally different towards this friend of the same age who got along well with him. He had experienced life and death together. He patted Shuelei's thick shoulders and sighed, Uncle was right. Leister, you really shouldn't have charged in. How's senior sister Xiaolin? She's not from the same world. Shuelei took 2 steps back after the hug, revealing a depressed expression. These are her exact words. Sigh. Shuelei still wanted to say something, but he turned his head to look at the surrounding environment and the various people. In the end, he could only smile bitterly. No matter how he tried to argue, it all seemed pale and powerless in the face of ironclad proof. At this time, Bamboo Pole coughed a few times in the encrypted channel, asking for attention. Everyone, the small talk and such is enough. I haven't finished talking about the situation here. Red Fox, who was next to Bamboo Pole, came back to his senses at this time. Hey, what are you saying all this for? Do you really want to fight the secular side? Go through fire and water with Fairchild? Don't you see that there are plenty of routes to retreat from? Haven't you guys stayed long enough in that damn place? Chapter 219. The Red Fox fired off a barrage of questions. Bamboo Pole, who was beside him as the speaker, calmly explained to him, well, it's not that we're helping Child. You see, there are currently nearly 100 innocent citizens trapped in Frost River reality. All of them are in Area A of the first level, and they are divided into nearly 20 gathering points. Each gathering point has anywhere from 2 to 7 people. Luonan was listening attentively when Zhang Yingying unforgivingly came over. Bai Xinyan, who was next to Luonan, held Zhang Yingying's shoulder to no avail. Hey, you said that you feel sharper. Is that true? Really? Luonan's reply was resolute and decisive. Empty words? Who would believe you? Here, draw me another portrait. Ha! Luonan wasn't able to react for a time. Zhang Yingying had already stuffed a thin leather notebook into his hand. She stabbed a pencil into his hand in passing. She was very considerate and sharpened it, but it nearly pierced his palm. In this kind of amusement park, it was really difficult to find something like a paper notebook. What Zhang Yingying gave him should be some kind of game accessory. The outer and inner layers were all gaudy. Luonan was a bit speechless for a time. His sketchy style was actually able to garner fans? Moreover, it was a strange woman like Zhang Yingying. Bai Xinyan was also curious. Do you like his paintings? Zhang Yingying was all smiles. Her anger could no longer be seen. Shamans can go back in time and foresee things. They can see things that others haven't seen. The boss said that my current perception of the white rainbow is too subjective and requires multiple references. His painting is simple and straightforward, and it saves me the most effort. Luonan could only laugh bitterly at this reason. He casually flipped open the book, but then he raised his head to look at the ceiling. Mist was sprinkling down from there. The mist had long since soaked Luonan's hair. Now that the mist had sprinkled onto the book, a patch soon split open. Zhang Yingying rolled her eyes and didn't make things difficult for him. After this, you have to give it to me tomorrow. Do you have mine? Bai Xinyan joined in the fun. From beginning to end, Luonan still held a bit of vigilance against this person. He could only lower his head and smile, putting on an introverted and shy appearance. However, his attention was quickly drawn to Bamboo Pole's explanation. The existence of nearly 100 citizens is a headache. Currently, the Knights of Equity have no plans to capture any hostages. However, they are not prepared to let anyone out either. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Bamboo Pole then played a video which showed that the gunmen were guarding the exit. As long as a citizen tried to escape, they would shoot through their legs with light weapons, leaving them to scream and groan. It was a very cruel scene. At the side, Shuele hissed. He was very uncomfortable with this scene and couldn't help but mutter, "Isn't this a hostage? They're just building a snake nest." Bamboo Pole adjusted the screen so that everyone could see what was going on. Those who tried to escape, after their legs were pierced, became the best carrier for the words of Christ. The pain they suffered increased by several times, but they couldn't even faint. They could only struggle and scream, letting the invisible viper slither in and out. Soon they were on the verge of death. The screams and struggles were also releasing a huge amount of negative psychic waves, affecting the trapped people who were not injured but were dominated by fear and panic, causing them to spread to the snake nest. The more densely packed the snake nests are, the more the Order of Justice's first ablatum can display their abilities to the fullest. The distance restrictions they face are also smaller. According to past intelligence, if you want a humanoid weapon like Baze to operate at full power, 3 snake nests around him is the standard. If you want to add other ablatum knights, it would at least double the number. Speaking of which, it was a very correct choice for you to bring that rich second generation over. Boss Luo's format pyramid is also very powerful. Bamboo Pole was referring to Huang Bingjin, who had fallen back into a coma. Luo Nan had added the format pyramid to Huang Bingjin's body, suppressing the effects of the snake nests. Luo Nan received praise, but he didn't feel any joy. Shuele couldn't bear to watch the cruel scene of mental torture on the monitor screen. Luo Nan was the same. Plus, this sort of scene triggered the bad feeling he had before. It made him feel uncomfortable from the inside out. Red Fox ridiculed at this time, so the play has changed. It has changed to a world-shaking rescue? I say, is childishness contagious? One devilish brat is enough. Luo Nan felt bad. He had been inexplicably implicated. His heart was even more vexed. He took a deep breath and suppressed the pain in his finger. It turned out that he had unconsciously exerted strength in his hand. In the end, he broke the tip of the pencil and the sharp point pierced into his finger. At this time, Zhang Yingying spoke in the encrypted channel. Hey Fox. Enough of your squeaking. The Order of Justice wouldn't scare you to this extent. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. They were originally on the same side. Who would have thought that Zhang Yingying would go back on her word? And so would Bamboo Pole. Red Fox was already in a bad mood. Now that he was angry, he spoke without restraint. I'm sorry, but I really wasn't scared by the Order of Justice. I was scared by my pig-headed teammates. The Order of Justice does things without the slightest scruple. They are one of the big 3. If they can do something, they can handle it. No one can do anything to them. But the devilish brat is different. He doesn't even know the basics of choosing a battlefield. He wants to play with a big scene. What human-faced arachnid, Fairchild, words of Christ. His tempo is flying. You guys aren't afraid of getting your faces blown up when playing with explosives, but I'm afraid of getting shit blown up. Look at these innocent civilians. Didn't they get hit by the explosion? Zhang Yingying flew into a rage. Fox, don't go too far. Red Fox's words were far too incisive. Luo Nan really did forget to breathe for an instant. He just instinctively pulled out the tip of the pencil from his finger, letting it fall into the shallow water on the ground. His exquisite perception inexplicably locked onto the entire process of this tiny object's fall. This included its flip, its entry into the water, and the tiny ripples it created. Luo Nan used this method to distract his mind and enjoy a moment of tranquility. But by the time his attention returned, the boiling heat in his chest became more and more unbearable. He wanted to follow this burning emotion and argue loudly. He wanted to denounce Red Fox's stubborn and unreasonable attitude. But in the end he did not say a single word. He just lowered his eyebrows and retracted his eyes. He carefully limited the range of his mental senses to a range of 10 meters. Layer by layer he expanded outwards. 10 meters, 20 meters, 50 meters. Soon the range of his mental senses surpassed cat eyes. It continued to expand outwards. As the range of his mental senses rapidly expanded, the flow of information pouring in from the outside increased exponentially. The feedback of this information was not like the simple soul configuration, which could realize the convenient conversion of energy and information. The information had to follow the functional mechanism of the human nervous system and pass through specific neurotransmitters and various other forms of stimulation. The information had to be transmitted in an orderly manner, advancing layer by layer. Only then could the information finally fuse into the center of the brain and form a complete picture of all-encompassing perception. During this process, the structure of the human body would inevitably undergo an absolute test. In a few breaths of time, all sorts of detailed information about the environment of Area A of Frost River reality rushed toward Luonan like a rising tide. There was a loud rumble. Chapter 220. At this moment, it was as if Luonan had been struck by an enormous wave. His ears rang in an instant, his eyes were dazzled, and even his skin was a bit numb. However, his endurance was different from before. His mental plane was stable from beginning to end. As the subsequent impact of the flow of information ebbed, the stimuli of light, color, sound, and even hot, cold, and painful sensations were sorted out. The external scene gradually grew clearer and brighter. In the next few seconds, Luonan finally had the spare energy to take a deep breath. He divided a strand of his mind and compared it to the structural diagram of Frost River reality given by Bamboo Pole. He sorted out the location of his own sensing area. It was not easy to do this amidst the chaotic flow of information. In his daze he heard Shui Lei curse, "What kind of person is this?" And he also heard Red Fox's sneer in the encrypted channel. "I'm going too far? Secretary, you dare to pat your chest and say that you didn't have the intention to wipe your boss's face but in such a hilarious rescue mission?" Luonan did not raise his eyelids. He did not care whether or not He Yuan would respond or not. He just focused on sorting out the sensing information according to his established train of thought. Red Fox's voice completely faded away when Luonan's mental plane was touched in many places. The corresponding information refreshed in succession. He immediately used the private chat function of the encrypted channel to send a message to Bamboo Pole, who was in charge of intelligence work. There was no immediate response. A full 5 seconds passed before Bamboo Pole replied with a sluggish emoticon. Luonan let out a long breath after doing this. He suddenly felt pain on his back. It was Zhang Yingying slapping him on the back. She shouted, "Get your spirits up." Then she cursed back at Fox. "According to your logic, you're blabbering here to clean up the mess of the Order of Justice? So it turns out that the people they sent, the reserved area, and the guns were all forced by Luonan? These words sound quite familiar to me. Back then you ran out of Hu City like a stray dog. You seem to be wearing this hat. Back then you didn't even dare to fart. Now that you have the chance, why don't you seize the moment and throw this smelly thing at someone else?" At the support point, the Red Fox was infuriated after being exposed by Zhang Yingying. He had committed the most basic of mistakes. He immediately opened his mouth and roared into the channel, "It's easy for you to talk. Why are you playing with double standards? Do you want to King bet on what kind of faces those people from headquarters will have? Maybe we don't need to go too far. Let's watch the news tomorrow. What kind of attitude will Xia City's government and the military have? Bet that you'll run away again?" Zhang Yingying spat. "If you have the guts, go yell at headquarters and the government of Xia City. When the courageous are enraged, they draw their swords towards those stronger than them. When the cowardly are enraged, they draw their swords towards those weaker than them. Have you ever learned this in elementary school? If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. If not, I'll teach you for free." Probably feeling that the team's atmosphere was on the verge of collapse, He Yuan finally opened her mouth, stopping Zhang Yingying from continuing. But now Zhang Yingying was also furious. If she didn't like it, she wanted to stab him back. "I'm sorry, we don't know each other that well. Don't call me that intimately. I don't want to say it a third time. Alright, Secretary, she asked you to pat your chest. Don't back down just because you don't have the capital to back down." The conversation between the two of them didn't need to be transmitted through the encrypted channel. This kind of face-to-face situation was much more direct than in the channel. For a moment, everyone raised their eyebrows. Under everyone's gazes, He Yuan's face was devoid of joy or anger. She replied calmly, "I want to correct a mistake of yours. Mr. Luo isn't weak. The things he can do, are much more than what you're arguing with your mouths. Right now, the intelligence information has been adjusted. Please receive it carefully, everyone." Ha. Zhang Yingying and Red Fox used emotionless tones to respond to He Yuan's forceful change of topic. The only thing they had in common was dissatisfaction. However, He Yuan's words, Mr. Luo, shifted the focus onto Luo Nan. So much so that Bamboo Pole coughed a few times in an attempt to rouse everyone's attention, but it was to no avail. He could only helplessly play the picture. Fine. You guys should see for yourselves. I'll just mention one thing. The previous data is for reference only. From now on, all intelligence updates regarding the interior of Frost River reality will be based on the new picture. As he spoke, two moving pictures that looked almost identical simultaneously appeared in the encrypted channel. One was labeled old, and the other was labeled new. The two pictures were similarly concise and clear. The distribution of the red dots representing the enemy and the green dots representing the trapped citizens looked roughly similar. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that the number of red and green dots in the old and new pictures did not match. The new picture had at least 10% more dots. This was the scale of over a dozen people. The vast majority of these 10% were red dots representing the enemy. You've changed the monitoring method? Cat Eyes spoke with her unique sharp voice. These extra ones are all Ablatum Knights. Over at the support point, Bamboo Pole shot a glance at Red Fox, who still had a sneer on his face. He sighed, "Don't ask me. This has nothing to do with me." His words were unclear, but it was this vague response. This chapter has yet to end. Please turn the page. This was tantamount to giving the others the clearest direction. After all, Hiyuan had long since mentioned the matter of the all-encompassing perception. She had also used the excuse of correcting mistakes just now. "You're joking." Red Fox wanted to maintain his cold and cynical attitude, but Bamboo Pole just spread his hands. Cat Eyes did not make a sound. She seemed to have sunk into deep thought. The sneer on Red Fox's face stiffened bit by bit. Then he seemed to have sobered up a bit. A twitching struggle appeared on his face. But before he could open his mouth again, Zhang Yingying let out an "aha" from over at Frost River reality. She grinned and gave Luo Nan a heavy slap on the back. "Well done. A man of action triumphs over a cannon of words. A certain person's thousands of crooked words can't compare to doing a single thing in a down-to-earth manner. But you really are stealing Kitty's rice bowl, hey?" Zhang Yingying felt that she had spoken indiscreetly when she said these words. She hastily shut her mouth. Cat Eyes, who was by Luo Nan's side, woke up from her deep contemplation. She turned her head slightly, and the radiance between the slits of her eyes was like a blade that had just been tempered with fire. It cut across Luo Nan's face. Even though Cat Eyes had long since regarded this fellow as a hidden boss, the ability that Luo Nan displayed in the domain she was most proficient in at this moment was an intense stimulation to her heart. All-encompassing suppression? This wasn't even the slightest bit funny. Cat Eyes stared fixedly at Luo Nan, attempting to see through Luo Nan's essence. But it was just like her previous experience of failure. She did not gain anything substantial. In the end, she could only resort to words. "Let's not talk about anything else. This place. Are you sure there's someone here? How did you do it?" Cat Eyes was pointing at a certain location on the periphery of Area A's arena plate. A certain red dot was marked extremely clearly on the new map. But there was no trace of it on the old map. This area was at the edge of Cat Eyes' long-range perception range. She should have been able to sense it, but in reality, she was unable to sense the existence of the other party. Red Fox suddenly had a point to vent his anger. He was unable to care too much. He chased after the end of Cat Eyes' words and spoke in a hoarse voice. "Kitty is right. Are you sure there's someone here? Can you guarantee that it's accurate and not just a random?" "You shut up. Did you spit out your brain from your cannon of words?" Cat Eyes and Zhang Yingying spoke at nearly the same time. The length of their words were different and their emotions were different. However, they made Red Fox choke on the spot. From Red Fox's perspective, at this very moment, be it Frost River reality, the support point, or the virtual encrypted channel, all of them had sunk into a suffocating silence. Chapter 221. After venting her anger, Cat Eyes returned to silence. She seemed to be at a loss as to which side she should stand on. Luckily, Zhang Yingying stole the show once again at this time. She laughed and rubbed Luo Nan's back to soothe him. She even used her height advantage to pat his head and give him a good compliment. Luo Nan slapped her away in a bad mood. Zhang Yingying was not angry. On the contrary, she was very excited. She was the one who recommended Luo Nan into the society. Any of Luo Nan's achievements added luster to her face. At least she believed so. She didn't doubt the correctness of Luo Nan's answer. It had nothing to do with his ability. It just stemmed from her trust in this young and inexperienced high school student's personality. Hey, let's get to the bottom of this. Tell me, why didn't Kitten see it but you did? Luonan thought for a bit and finally spoke. There's a corpse over there. Zhang Yingying was a little stunned. She wasn't the only one. There were very few people around who understood what was going on. Zhang Yingying tried her best to understand and tried to answer. You are saying that the Ablatum Knight over there disguised himself as a corpse, so Bamboo Pole and Kitten escaped? Luonan nodded. This is too. Zhang Yingying was simply speechless. Though Luonan was able to see a corpse 50 meters away in such a complicated environment was already quite amazing, what kind of lousy reason was this? Could this be the legendary 1,000 gold formula of the Jianghu? She had no intention of refuting Luonan, but she could not help but seek confirmation from Cat Eyes. Is this the case? Hello, Kitty? Cat Eyes only reacted when she heard the second voice. She forced herself to reply, there is indeed a corpse there. She was in low spirits and no longer doubted him. Through the encrypted channel, Bamboo Pole sent over a video feed of the surveillance system. Indeed, there was a corpse there. It was quite fat and it was a common overweight person in the city. It looked like it had been hit by a bullet. It was lying on the ground, motionless, and there was a large pool of blood under its body. Judging from the amount of blood loss, the chances of survival were slim. Anyone who saw the video couldn't help but be speechless. No matter how he looked at it, it was still a corpse. There were no signs that it was an Ablatum Knight in disguise. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. In the encrypted channel, the Red Fox's hoarse and trembling laughter rang out. You say that this fatty is an Ablatum Knight? Excellent. Those who have seen the information on the Order of Justice, raise your hands. Which of the 9 Ablatum Knights of Xia City has such an appearance? For a moment, no one responded. The Red Fox's voice suddenly became louder. Or does Boss Luo believe that we should never let our guard down against any humanoid object? Then according to your logic, all the corpses in Frost River reality have the possibility of being Ablatum Knights. Who will verify this? Just based on those spots of light? What a joke. Towards the end, the Red Fox's throat was already torn. He had always believed that his words and actions were not wrong. Now he was even more certain of this. The reason why Luonan encountered such an awkward situation was ultimately due to the Holy Mothers surrounding the immature Luonan. There was no objectivity to speak of in their protective attitudes. More than once, he had the urge to turn around and leave this goddamn operation team so that he wouldn't be labeled as a coward. However, from Hu City to Xia City, he had accumulated many years of viciousness and depression. It was not so easy to vent it. With this anger, even if his head was broken and he bled, he would still argue this matter clearly. Bamboo Pole looked at Red Fox's expression and felt bad for him. He wanted to mediate the situation, so he reached out a hand and pressed down on Red Fox's shoulder. Fox, listen to me. Including you. Red Fox forcefully pushed Bamboo Pole's hand away. His bloodshot eyes glared fiercely at Bamboo Pole. Is your brain full of shit? You let a little kid say whatever he wants to say? You don't care about right or wrong at all. You just applaud a post-processing GIF? Bamboo Pole sighed again and spread his hands. Fox, you need to calm down and think. Cold my ass. Red Fox gave Bamboo Pole a thumbs up, pointing downwards. Then he took a deep breath and grabbed his lapels with both hands. He shook the red jacket that represented his honor and reputation. He grinned and laughed once more. How about this? If you guys aren't doing it, then I'll do it. We'll make this bet. We'll bet on the Ablatum Knight. Bamboo Pole was startled. He suddenly realized what Red Fox meant. He reached out to grab him, but as a non-combatant, how could he compare to Red Fox, who had the reputation of being the city hunter? He reached out to grab empty air. Stop him, Bamboo Pole called out to Papercut. However, Papercut was also a mentally enhanced person. He wasn't any better than Bamboo Pole. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Red Fox's figure flashed a few times and he left the shopping center that served as the meeting point. He blended into the bustling street's surging stream of people. By the time Bamboo Pole and Papercut rushed out, their line of sight had already been blurred by the curtain of rain. How could they see Red Fox's shadow? Didn't you guys say that I only knew how to shoot my mouth off? I'll show you right now. Red Fox's lips curled into a cold smile. He walked toward the most chaotic area of the city center tonight with large strides. Red Fox, don't do meaningless things. You can't be reasonable, so you want to throw a tantrum? 2 messages consecutively appeared in the encrypted channel. The first was He Yuan's words and the second was naturally Zhang Yingying's. These two words were spoken at nearly the same time. Immediately, He Yuan's unprecedentedly stern gaze pierced over. Even with Zhang Yingying's usual lively temperament, she instantly choked. Just as Zhang Yingying was about to counterattack, Bai Xinyan moved closer to her ear and said, "Hey, you can't force people to extremes." Zhang Yingying opened her mouth but no sound came out. She had been reminded by Bai Xinyan. She discovered that Red Fox's state wasn't too normal. It was to the extent that he seemed to be smashing a broken jar. Was this necessary? At this moment, Red Fox's hoarse voice entered the encrypted channel. "Then explain it clearly, Miss Secretary. Explain it clearly to me. What is the meaning? What is the meaning of this damned night?" Red Fox continued to use the low-level error method to communicate. He simply didn't care about the strange gazes cast by the people around him. After he cursed loudly, he laughed at himself in a hoarse voice. "Since there is no meaning, it doesn't matter what I do." As his voice fell, his footsteps sped up a bit. The support point was actually closer to Frost River reality than the Yulan Hotel. He secretly exerted strength in his legs. As he spoke, he saw the triangular flying ship surrounded by spotlights and police lights in the distance. In front of him was a stream of people retreating from Frost River reality. Their footsteps were either fast or slow. Their expressions alternated between fear, panic, excitement, and curiosity. Red Fox did not dodge or evade. He charged into the stream of people. His hands were in his pockets. He used the most relaxed method to advance against the flow of people. His arms and shoulders brushed against each other several times but they did not affect him in the slightest. It was a very familiar feeling. These ignorant faces were no different from those in Hu City. Chapter 222. The cold smile on Red Fox's lips seemed to have been carved by a knife. This was also the curve he was used to. Layers upon layers of absurd déjà vu assaulted him, causing his memories to stir. It seemed as though a long time ago it was also a city like this, a night like this, a stream of people like this, and himself like this. However, there was no triangular spaceship in front of him. There was only a target that was desperately hiding his aura and fleeing in panic. Oh, I remember now. What a perfect operation. A group of friends and colleagues who were as outstanding as him had used 10 days and nights to lay out the plan. They had executed every step perfectly and he, the urban hunter, had delivered the final blow. In the most bustling city area, not a single innocent citizen had been harmed. He had calmly killed the target, the so-called fanatic who had tortured and murdered women and children as sacrifices to the evil god in the name of preaching. Filthy blood had splashed onto his jacket, but it was like a wantonly spilling of champagne. At that moment, all the participants had cheered excitedly. Most of them were young people who had just passed the society's entrance assessment. There were very few awakened ones among them. However, they had used a strict plan and a high level of execution to grind down the target's capital layer by layer. They had created various favorable situations and finally, they had perfectly killed the fanatic with B-rank strength. And then? What happened next? The church had unscrupulously wreaked havoc in Huqing. The list of participants had been leaked and they had singled out names to kill. In a few short days, more than half of the young people who had participated in the operation had died. What had the society done during this period of time? The headquarters had given them an evaluation and reprimand that they had acted without regard for the consequences. The branch had given them a safe haven ticket, that was equivalent to an expulsion order. Their former comrades and good friends had gone on a closed-door training trip. Those who had luckily survived had run out of Huqing like dogs. They had hidden in the wilderness and scattered in all directions. Now that they had contacted him, there was a 90% chance that they would not respond. They did not know where they were and whether they were alive or dead. This was the F*King ending. The stream of people parted in front of Red Fox. Countless blurry faces that seemed familiar flowed past his shoulders. His mood had inexplicably entered a wondrous state of tranquility. He could even crack a joke. Distance to the target is 856 meters. Estimated time of arrival is 90 seconds. Everyone can raise the stakes. However, if anyone dares to touch my gambling equipment, I will fight them. The encrypted channel was silent. It was just like the night before he had fled Huqing. The corners of the Red Fox's lips twitched. In the end, these remaining memories were sealed in that cold and mocking smile. At this moment, Red Fox had already arrived at the outskirts of Frost River reality. There was still a large crowd of onlookers here. As the police cordon expanded outwards, they reluctantly retreated backwards. Among them were some media reports that were unable to occupy a good position. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The personnel were trying to squeeze a path against the flow to get closer to the scene. As for the 3 surrounding buildings, the flashing lights were like twinkling stars. Occasionally they would synchronize and illuminate the entire area in a deathly white. It was a perfect graveyard. Just as the Red Fox was about to cut into the crowd, a new message slid into the encrypted channel. It was still from He Yuan. Our attention shouldn't be on a corpse. The Red Fox was startled when he heard what was said. His brain spun a few rounds before he finally let out a laugh. I knew it. To hell with a Bladem Knight, to hell with broken corpses. This is simply the biggest rubbish joke. Within Frost River reality, Zhang Yingying's eyes were wide open. She raised a finger and pointed at He Yuan. She wanted to berate her with a few words, but her gaze unconsciously turned to Luo Nan. Luo Nan's eyes were still drooping as he stood solemnly and silently. He did not have the calmness of having the pearl of wisdom in his hands, nor did he have the panic of having his scam seen through. Red Fox laughed in a low voice. Miss Secretary, are you saying that you want to fold up and admit defeat? Have you asked for the boss' opinion before saying these words? Mr. Luo, Boss Luo, won't you say a few words? It was as if Luo Nan did not hear anything. He did not respond at all. Zhang Yingying could not hold it in any longer, but Bai Xinyan hugged her neck. Her actions were intimate and she did not allow Zhang Yingying to say anything. Red Fox did not receive a response. His smile grew even wider, but his voice became even more hoarse. Good. Very good. Your ability to wipe your face but is truly amazing. Is there any meaning in doing this? Is it to forcefully slap my face? Or is it to let this scammer off the hook? He Yuan spoke calmly. Isn't this what you want? Red Fox was simply speechless. Are you trying to be funny? He Yuan sighed imperceptibly. This has nothing to do with being funny. I am just trying to bring your attention back to a more practical level. For example, your mistakes, your logical errors. You are unreasonable. At this moment, Red Fox simply had the urge to smash the Hexier. But then, a familiar voice resounded in his ears. If we really do discuss this matter with the order of justice in the future, what will we be? The first wave of cannon fodder? Or will we be used as scapegoats? It's you who hasn't seen headquarters morality. The matter has already blown up. These secret orders are the best at dealing with matters of faith. They are making a mountain out of a molehill. Headquarters, on the other hand, is politically correct from start to finish. Red Fox finally realized that this was his voice. It was his original words, just slightly edited. The original meaning had not changed. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. He could only sneer at this. What? You want to report this to headquarters? Go ahead. I was harmed once in the past. I have experience. It doesn't matter if I do it a few more times. He Yuan still took out the edited version she had made at the last minute. The next part of the speech was even closer. It was also the beginning of Red Fox's falling out with everyone. What human-faced arachnid, Fairchild, words of Krite. The tempo is flying. You guys aren't afraid of getting your faces blown up when you play with him. I'm afraid of getting shit blown up. Look at these innocent citizens. Didn't they get blown up? The Red Fox was preparing for her next counterattack, but when these words suddenly entered her ears, her blood suddenly surged and her face flushed. As the sound waves shook her eardrums, the mocking and sharp tone was like a knife that pressed into the tip of her heart, grinding back and forth. He was in pain and annoyance. He opened his mouth wanting to speak, but his throat was inexplicably filled with the echoes of blown up, blown up. It was so solid that he could not spit out half a word. Only now did He Yuan's voice enter his ears. My code name is Secretary, but Luo Nan is not my boss. None of the people here have known him for more than 2 weeks. Luo Nan is a rookie who just entered the society. Whether it is in the mortal world or the inner world, his life experience can be said to be lacking. The chances of him making mistakes and stirring up trouble far surpass the rest of us, especially since he has the ability to make a big deal out of it. But me, Yingying Bamboo Pole? Many of us are leaning towards him, protecting him and helping him. Isn't this good? He isn't cannon fodder. He doesn't need to be a scapegoat. He doesn't need to be politically correct. Aren't you satisfied with this kind of result in this loose society? Aren't you looking forward to it? Especially after you came out from Hu City. Don't you King feed me chicken soup? The word Hu City was like a brand that was about to melt. It was forcefully stabbed into Red Fox's chest, making him unable to restrain himself from howling in pain. What kind of society is this? At best you're a death list. You list them one by one, then you cross them off one by one. Cross them off. You guys. Oh? Does the list you're talking about include me? The voice suddenly rang out behind his head, shocking him to the point that his scalp was about to explode. Even though Red Fox's emotions were at their most intense, his instincts still helped him turn his body and pull apart some distance. Only then did he turn his head. But he was stupefied on the spot in the next moment. A meager middle-aged man wore a well-ironed formal attire that would only appear at formal banquets. He wore a bow tie around his neck as he stood amidst the chaotic stream of people. The man smiled at Red Fox. The corners of his eyes, which were half covered by his retro glasses, rippled with light fine lines due to his smile. Chapter 223. Good evening, Fox. Good evening. Red Fox responded instinctively. In reality, he was sluggish for a full 5 seconds before he managed to regain his wits. He bowed again. President, you are here? The middle-aged man behind him was the president of the Wilderness Explorers Society's Xia City branch. He was the nominal leader of all ability users in the city, Ouyang Qin. There was practically no one in Xia City who did not know of the president, who was known as the gentleman of the laboratory. If one wanted to find the president, one had to knock on the door of the laboratory on the 13th floor of the Shangding Triplex building. Especially after the Hexa came out and the gradual perfection of the psychic wave network, Ouyang Qin took on the roles of chief engineer, operating officer, and administrator. He spent all day adjusting the network, solving bugs, or carrying out service refinement and in-depth research. Many people suspected that their president Ouyang would not take a single step out of the building for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The formal attire he wore had not changed for many years only because he appeared in public at a pitifully small number of formal meetings. It was because Red Fox knew of these things that he felt as if he had fallen into a dream when he saw Ouyang Qin appear outside Frost River reality. His mind was in chaos. Also, what did the president's first words mean? Ouyang Qin smiled as if he was just passing by. He waved his hand at Red Fox. You guys talk. I interrupted midway. Sorry for being rude. When Red Fox heard this, he immediately looked at the encrypted channel. However, there was no eye-catching administrator symbol. Ouyang Qin was not in the encrypted channel. But looking at it from another perspective, the entire psychic wave network was set up by Ouyang Qin. He had the authority to supervise all official actions coordinated by the society. It was normal for him to see their argument. Did he see everything that was said just now? Red Fox was a bit absent-minded, but he could feel that Ouyang Chen's arrival had miraculously lowered his burning emotions. All that was left was a slight warmth in the pit of his heart. He Yuan's voice continued to come from the hexa-year. I don't want to give you the impression that I'm expressing my emotions. I only wish to state the facts for you. Every metropolitan area in the world is nominally under the rule of the United Government. In reality, they are in a semi-independent state. The ecology of every city is different. The secular world is like this. The inner world is the same. There is no true unified order and logic. I don't like this situation. But it has resulted in this fact. Regardless of headquarters' conclusion, no matter what your results are in whose city, it is meaningless to transplant you to Xia City. Red Fox Heart. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. His mind was erratic and most of the words went in one ear and out the other. But he noticed something. From the moment Ouyang Qin appeared until now, even if he did not enter the encrypted channel, his reaction was still very intense. However, there was no news from Frost River reality at all. There was no doubt, no surprise, no greeting, nothing at all. It seemed that he Yuan and the others were completely unaware of Ouyang Chen's arrival. Or perhaps, this President Ouyang only existed in his own world. Could it really be an illusion? The Red Fox's consciousness became even more absent-minded. He could not help but turn his head to look at Ouyang Qin. The president was so clear and honest. He even raised his hand to signal for him to listen carefully. Right at this moment, a few highly sensitive words pierced his eardrums from He Yuan's side. I don't know what the death list is, but I believe that an awakened's core self-logic shouldn't be distorted by external threats. President Ouyang, who proposed the theory of 3 levels of logic, was right beside him. The Red Fox naturally knew the meaning of self-logic. That was what an ability user used to influence the outside world, to truly unleash their own power. Distortion? That was not a good word at all. First he was slapped in the face by his own words. Then he was frightened by Ouyang Qin. The current Red Fox did not have the mood to be entangled. He just sneered and prepared to inform the other side of Ouyang Chen's arrival. Aren't the surrounding people stupid? Ouyang Qin suddenly asked. Huh? The Red Fox heard this and subconsciously turned his head to look all around. He observed the bustling stream of people coming and going, but he did not know how to answer. Ouyang Qin extended his right hand and gently swung his arm. It was as if he was tapping a beat. He drew a triangle in the air and suddenly changed the topic. The 3 first ablatums of the Order of Justice are standing in a triangle. The evolution field covers them and acts as a prelude to the curse. One of them is a secret-bound first ablatum and 2 clear-sworn first ablatums. Their strength is at most B+, C+, and C+. According to the evolution incantation theory, their actual range of control is a vast area with the center of the triangle as the center. The radius is 2 times the longest midline. Red Fox felt like an idiot. He could not keep up with Ouyang Chen's train of thought. If we convert the range, then this means that these 3 buildings, Frost River Reality, and the 2 neighboring blocks are all within the range of the curse. Everyone who is watching and those in the neighboring blocks are actually in danger of losing their lives. Yet they are still here. Aren't they stupid? Ouyang Qin was very serious. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. The smile on his face was no longer there. Behind the retro glasses, his eyes were calm and clear. This was the usual appearance of the gentleman of the laboratory. Red Fox was more familiar with this, but he was also more nervous. He hesitated for a moment before answering, because they are completely ignorant of the danger? More or less, but it's not enough. Ouyang Qin extended his hand and pointed outwards. It was as if he was stirring the surface of the water. His finger streaked across the surging stream of people. Fine ripples spread out. Red Fox's eyes suddenly widened. At this moment he finally discovered the strangeness of the surrounding crowd. No, it was the problem between him and Ouyang Qin. The 2 of them were clearly standing in the stream of people, but everyone was ignoring them. Even if everyone's attention was focused on the area around Frost River Reality, it was inevitable that they would bump into each other in the crowded stream of people. However, the current situation was that no one was making contact with the 2 of them. They passed by their sides, in the middle, and even passed through their bodies. The 2 of them seemed to have transformed into formless ghosts. Their bodies were in the real world, coexisting with the surrounding stream of people. Yet, there was an insurmountable distance between them. And on the other side of the encrypted channel, Red Fox clearly saw that the timer in the corner of the interface had actually stopped. This is true projection, spatial fault, whatever you want to call it. However, I'm more used to calling it the logic world. Ouyang Qin extended his hand and pointed at his temple. He added, "It's a world that I interpret using my logic." Was this the power of an extraordinary? In the face of such an inconceivable method, Red Fox completely lost the courage to think. He could only bow his head and admit defeat. "President, please give us a clear explanation." Ouyang Qin did not feel offended. Just like he did in the society's high-level training class, he used the usual terminology to explain, "It's because they know nothing about our logic and the logic of the inner world. The range of thought of ordinary people mostly stops at the limits of their field of vision. Therefore they cannot see the danger. There are also some people who consider the range of a firearm, the range of an explosion, and other concepts. However, this is not enough. If they truly want to avoid trouble, they need to cross at least 2 street blocks. This is a danger that they cannot imagine." Ouyang Chen's explanation was undoubtedly the truth. Red Fox nodded. Who knew that Ouyang Chen would change the topic? "It's not just them. Even you don't understand. In a sense, you are as stupid as them. No, you are even more stupid." What? Chapter 224. Red Fox was like a poor student who had been questioned by a teacher. He was tongue-tied and did not know what to do. Ouyang Chen entered a strict teacher state. The cold and clear gaze behind the lenses caused Red Fox's taut nerves to tremble. At this time, the second question was raised. What is the logic of the inner world? Red Fox opened his mouth but did not say anything. Actually, he had already spoken the thoughts in his mind when he was reprimanding Luo Nan. What difference could there be? It was all about politics, reality, compromise. But it was quite difficult to say these words in front of Ouyang Chen. Ouyang Chen did not expect Red Fox to respond. He simply gave his answer. The logic of the inner world is determined by destructive power. The destructive power range of extraordinary power determines the boundaries of the inner world's logic. Red Fox was dumbfounded, but he had no way to refute. Compared to ordinary people, the number of ability users is very small. But our destructive power is very strong. We form associations, orders, and organizations. We project our organizations to various parts of the world, allowing our destructive power to cover the entire world. As long as we want to, we can directly affect the life and death of every person. Secular society has been warped by us in this way. In the end, this is a kind of bandit logic. President. Red Fox became a patient with a communication disorder. He did not know how to express his opinion at all. Ouyang Chen curled his lips. Let's change it to a nicer sounding term. We can call it the logic of the strong. This is because the most powerful destructive power is built upon the foundation of the self-logic of the strong. The reality of the situation is that there is no strong destructive power that can cover the entire world. In the end, there is a limit. Therefore, the inner world revolves around the strong, forming radiation circles of all sizes. The normal mode of interaction in the inner world is born from the collisions, compromises, and exchanges between the circles of the strong. In the logic of the inner world, the strong are the foundation. Other conflicts, compromises, and politics are just expressions. Then the question is, what is strong? Red Fox's brain finally began to spin when faced with the third question. At this time, Ouyang Chen pointed to the top floors of the 3 buildings. 3 first ablatives working together can completely collapse a skyscraper regardless of the cost. Are they strong? Red Fox answered cautiously. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. That depends on who you compare yourself to. Excellent. Ha! The Red Fox still remembered that this was the first time Ouyang Chen had acknowledged him since they met. However, what did the president acknowledge? Ouyang Chen adjusted the frame of his glasses, but his gaze was unprecedentedly cold. You finally know that strength is determined by comparison. I can add a few more sentences. Strength is achieved through resistance, through real achievements. So where is your resistance? The Red Fox's heart twitched fiercely. He was stunned on the spot. Against whom? The scattered memories gathered together like a cluster of clouds. Red Fox vaguely remembered the time when he first came to Xia City. Now that he thought about it, it was really strange. After suffering such a painful lesson, why would he continue to reside in this damned association? Yes, it was because of the association's resources and benefits. It was because he needed to train hard and improve quickly so that he could return to Hu City and settle his grudges. But day after day, year after year, how could he forget? When and for what reason did he forget? He seemed to have forgotten as well. Was it because his talent was limited and he could not make any progress? Was it because of the passage of time and the healing of the heartache? No. In the final analysis, it was just as Yuan said. His self-logic had been distorted by the logic he hated the most in the past. Wasn't the word collapsed the most habitual tone of that bunch of trash from headquarters? Distorted. Red Fox extended his hands. He looked at the structure of his body, which had slowly changed over the years, but he felt that it was very unfamiliar. Ouyang Chen's voice entered his ears. Don't get distracted. Let's continue to discuss strength. Oh, I mean to discuss why you are stupid. The turmoil in Red Fox's mind was interrupted. His melancholy lessened slightly, but his thoughts became even more chaotic. He raised his head in a daze and looked at the president who had just given him a severe warning. Resistance or comparison is fine. We need to give an example. Tell me, who is the strongest here? Of course it's you, President. Red Fox did not know whether to laugh or cry, but he answered without the slightest hesitation. Ouyang Chen was currently the only officially registered extraordinary in the Xia City branch. He was a super powerful being who stood at the top of the pyramid of humanity. Even though the Order of Justice's secret-bound first ablatum, Anwang, was a powerful being who could make people pale at the mention of his name, he was far from being mentioned in the same breath as Ouyang Chen. Please turn the page if this chapter is not finished. If Ouyang Chen completely disregarded the various restraints between extraordinaries and hardened his heart to make a move, the three first oblatums of the secular side would either have to risk their lives to summon their holy relic or they would immediately kneel and beg Fairchild to switch sides and help them. Aside from these two options, there was no third way to resist. Ouyang Chen did not hold back. He nodded in approval. And then, just talk about our side. The secretary, right? Red Fox's response was relatively quick. Ouyang Chen declined to comment. And then? Red Fox slowly pondered and answered, and then me, Inying, kitten, papercut, bamboo pole? I'm not familiar with Bai Xinyan. Ouyang Chen laughed. He did not make any movements, but a detailed perspective map of a building appeared in front of the two. It was none other than Frost River reality. Several figures were projected inside. They were Yuan and the other members of the society. Although they were small in size, they were vivid and lifelike. What about him? Ouyang Chen pointed at the child that Red Fox had intentionally or unintentionally skipped over. Luonan. Red Fox sneered. Him? He's not even an awakened. Yeah, he's still not an awakened. Ouyang Chen nodded, but then he sighed. He recited in a low voice, the common people are bright, I alone am muddled. The common people examine, I alone am muddled. Red Fox's attainments in ancient texts were shallow. He was dizzy from listening to Ouyang Chen. He could only raise his hands and surrender. President? Ouyang Chen did not intend to make things difficult for Red Fox. He laughed and said, I'm not a specialist in reading scriptures. From my personal understanding, the meaning of these words is, everyone's energy is limited. When a person establishes a higher level of logic, it will be hard for him to divert his attention to deal with the chaotic logic of the common people. And when he forms a higher level of logic, the logic of the common people will be meaningless to him. Therefore, the intelligent people of the common people will always be able to see his muddle-headedness and childishness. The further the logic of the common people is from the logic of the higher level, the more intense the contrast becomes. After reaching a certain level, they will no longer be able to communicate. They will run in opposite directions. This is why it is said, the path of understanding is like obscurity. The path of advancing is like retreating. The path of barbarians is like the path of barbarians. Ouyang Chen gazed at the small and exquisite projection. His gaze was deep and distant. A higher level and even stronger confrontation. If we use the image of the common people to see and evaluate his actions, how would we know the hardships within? Besides, he is still a novice. Everything must be accumulated from the beginning. Chapter 225. A group of people looked at each other in dismay at the junction between the private room area and the public arena of Frost River Reality Area A. Yuan stopped talking. Earlier, Red Fox had entered a strange state of silence. He did not respond no matter what. The excitement from before was like a bonfire that had been extinguished, turning into ashes. She can give orders, but I think her ability to communicate with others is average. Zhang Yingying whispered into Bai Xinyan's ear. It was easy for her to talk while standing. Bai Xinyan tightened her grip on Zhang Yingying's neck once more to shut her up. Yuan was as quiet as ever. She just lowered her eyes as if she was muttering to herself. On the street, Bamboo Pole walked quickly toward Frost River Reality. At the same time, he used the surrounding surveillance cameras to circle around a few times before finally capturing Red Fox's image. The angle of the image was not very good, but he could still see Red Fox's eye-catching red jacket. He stood like a stake in the stream of people. He was quietly lost in thought. No one knew what he was thinking. Bamboo Pole let out a long breath. It's good that he didn't just charge in. Those words were effective. Papercut swayed his slightly plump body with great effort to keep up with Bamboo Pole's footsteps. He tried to come up with an idea. Can we take the lead and verify it? The conversation between the two of them had intentionally avoided the encrypted channel so as to not agitate the Red Fox. Bamboo Pole shook his head without even thinking. It's too dangerous. According to Luonan's updated dynamic map, the one closest to He Yuan and the others was the corpse marked as an Ablatum Knight. However, the distance between each Ablatum Knight was not large. Right now, the situation in Frost River Reality Area A was like a strange chess game. The luxury private room area and the public arena were the boundaries of the river, separating the society from the order of justice. The society had deployed their chariots and cannons. Before they could do anything, the old generals were already fighting with their own Shixiang. However, the rest of the chess pieces were ready, and their formation was strict. Normally, these chariots and cannons were prepared to devour their own old generals. However, if the society really wanted to cross the river, then the corresponding pressure would naturally be borne by the society. Papercut spread his hands after listening to Bamboo Pole's explanation. Something will happen if we verify it. Something will happen if we don't verify it. Isn't this tormenting us? That boss Luo should at least say something clearly. Papercut did not take a stand on either side of the argument, but Red Fox's intense and resolute reaction stirred up some sympathy in him. At the same time, Luonan's long silence made him a bit dissatisfied. Even if he was a teenager, since he had stepped into the circle and participated in the operation, he had to show enough professionalism and teamwork. Especially in such a critical moment, a cheater could kill the entire team with a single thought. As a team member who wouldn't be afraid. In the end, the Red Fox was just overreacting. Papercut shot another glance at the encrypted channel. Then, as expected, he saw a young and childish face. For some unknown reason, Cat Eyes, who was sharing her view, had fixed her gaze on Luonan's face for quite some time. This seemingly immature high school student had entered a state of silence since the beginning of the debate. Be it sarcastic remarks or supportive actions, none of them could move him. Upon closer inspection, Luonan should still be using his all-encompassing senses. His eyes were vacant and his thoughts were misty. His attention wasn't placed on the matter of Red Fox. If one were to put it in a good way, it would be due diligence and indifference. But if one were to put it in a bad way, it would be too arrogant, selfish, and cold-blooded. Kids these days. Papercut's view leaned toward the latter, but he was calmer than Red Fox. In the end, he just sent a private message to Cat Eyes. Hey kitty, do you see anything? Cat Eyes did not respond immediately. Her view did not change at all. Was she entranced? Papercut was helpless. He could only send another message. Is there a way to verify it without provoking the order? It was in the instant he sent the message that he inexplicably recalled the conclusion of a famous lecturer in the Society's team coordination class. When the public channel of a team is idle, private messages and private messages are prevalent. When that happens, the collapse of the team is just a few feet away. Papercut grinned. He looked at Luonan's image in the encrypted channel and felt even worse. At this time, Cat Eye's view swayed. It seemed that someone was calling out to her. Kitty, what do you say? Inside Frost River Reality, Zhang Yingying could no longer hold back. She forcefully pried open Bai Xinyan's chokehold arm and called out to Cat Eyes. Papercut was not the only one who felt the terrible atmosphere of the team. Zhang Yingying had firmly stood by Luonan's side before, but she was very clear in her mind. As the focal point of the conflict, this kid's taciturn way of doing things was extremely inappropriate. Acting deep and reserved was no longer popular. Everyone liked warm guys. However, this brother Luonan really could not be woken up. Bai Xinyan, from the perspective of a doctor, advised her not to disturb Luonan while he was in the middle of sensing. This was to avoid a situation from happening. As for He Yuan, Luonan's impression of her as a swift and decisive secretary was inexplicably deep and reserved tonight. She spoke haltingly and her goal was unclear. Her performance was completely different from last week when they were dealing with the human-faced arachnid. It seemed that He Yuan had yet to truly clarify the so-called mission up until now. This made Red Fox so angry that his brain juice was about to burst out. Helpless, Zhang Yingying could only consult Cat Eyes, who was the most professional on core issues. If Cat Eyes could understand Luonan's intentions, help explain a few words or provide a proof, then there would be a possibility of loosening this tight knot. Cat Eyes did not respond immediately after the call was sent out. Instead, 2 seconds passed before she suddenly turned her head. It was as if she had been startled awake. This gave Zhang Yingying a fright. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Cat Eyes extended her hand and straightened the flat-brimmed hat she wore crookedly. The shadow hanging down from the brim of the hat blocked half of her face. "What are you talking about?" Zhang Yingying looked at her suspiciously before saying, "I'm talking about the matter of verification. Red Fox is unforgiving and Luonan, this fellow, just can't get a fart out of it. Do you have a way to verify? Something a bit more reliable?" On the other side, Papercut nodded to himself. He was thinking the same thing as Zhang Yingying. But then he saw that Cat Eyes did not respond. Instead, her line of sight shifted back to Luonan's face. She moved away slightly before returning back. It was as if that delicate and pretty young face possessed some sort of terrifying magnetism. This was the rhythm of being mesmerized. Papercut could not help but ridicule in his mind. It was also at this time that Cat Eyes' line of sight suddenly congealed. It was highly focused, so much so that the interface of her entire field of vision became blurry. The only thing that was clear was the pair of pupils that slowly rose up in the center of the interface. They still carried a bit of mottled and mottled colors. The pupils belonged to Luonan. This contradictory character seemed to have finally heard the various doubts and dissatisfactions of the people. He temporarily walked out from his self-enclosed logic to connect with the outside world. The target of Luonan's gaze was Cat Eyes, but Papercut was paying attention to Cat Eyes' shared perspective. It was the same as looking through Cat Eyes' eyes and locking gazes with Luonan. Okay, the word locking gazes was not accurate. It should be a one-sided observation. But inexplicably, when Papercut's gaze locked with Luonan's pupils that could not be considered clear, a cold shiver suddenly ran through his body. At this moment, even the drizzle falling from the sky had an additional chill to it. It seeped down to the bones. Bamboo poles whisper faintly entered Papercut's ears. "This eye is sinister." Chapter 226. No matter how many people noticed the strangeness in Luonan's pupils, Cat Eyes' feelings were 10 times stronger than theirs. It must be known that she was the one facing Luonan directly. Moreover, she was the unlucky one who suffered Luonan's torment early on. Right now, there was a chain that locked her body and soul. And behind these turbid eyes was a pair of demonic eyes. They looked at her from the outside to the inside, from the inside to the outside. They saw through her completely. The most terrifying thing was that she did not know how Luonan did it. She did not know a shred of it. It was like a figment of her imagination, but the trembling in the depths of her body and soul was so real. Cat Eyes' breathing stopped for half a second. It was this half a second that evoked the feeling of terror that surged like a tide when she encountered the Devil's Ritual at Limestone Water Village pub last week. It was as if the churning emotions could drown her at any time. It even gave her the urge to turn around and run. Cat Eyes' feet did not move, but her entire body was stiff. She saw Luonan raise his right hand at this time. His 5 fingers were slightly open and bent, and his index finger was slightly straighter. It was as if he was subconsciously drawing something, but it was also as if he was going to directly reach over. Luonan's arm really did reach forward. At the same time, Cat Eyes could clearly feel the space between her eyebrows tremble slightly. It was not that Luonan's fingertips had touched her. In reality, Luonan's arm was not extended straight. His fingertips were still some distance away from the brim of Cat Eyes' hat. He just tapped from a distance, and the direction of his finger corresponded to the space between her eyebrows. With a tap of his finger, he swiped downwards. Then, or even earlier, Cat Eyes' face, throat, shoulders, back, chest, abdomen, and even her legs began to tremble one after another. Luonan's finger moved down like a shadow, tracing Cat Eyes in the blink of an eye. It seemed to draw an extremely simple outline of a body. Cat Eyes did not move at all. She let him do as he pleased. This angered Zhang Yingying to the side. Luo Nan's perverted method, no matter what it meant, would only increase the distance between him and the others. It would make the situation even worse. She immediately shouted, "Hey! What kind of demonic madness is this?" Luo Nan turned his head upon hearing this. His gaze met Zhang Yingying's and he reached out and tapped through the air. Zhang Yingying was so angry that she was amused. She couldn't move her upper body, but she forcefully kicked her legs in exasperation. She wanted to teach this crazy boy a lesson. However, she had only lifted half of her slender, snow-white legs when her chest and abdomen began to tremble. This time Zhang Yingying knew how powerful he was. She let out a sigh. Even though Bai Xinyan was strangling her neck, she couldn't help but twist her body to resist the inexplicable trembling and itchiness. Her long legs, which she had raised up, also gave way. Next, no matter how Zhang Yingying dodged, Luo Nan's extended finger was always able to accurately correspond with the trembling points on her body. In the blink of an eye, another outline was drawn. At this moment, Bai Xinyan didn't even have the time to release her arm to free Zhang Yingying. Zhang Yingying had been in a great rage, but the moment Luo Nan's finger stopped moving, the white rainbow that revolved around her body gave an inexplicable soft cry. It resonated with the trembling points from afar. The power that had been painstakingly polished over the past few days seemed to have gained a bit more purity and clarity. She was stunned. No one besides her knew of the changes that had occurred within Zhang Yingying's body. However, Luo Nan displayed a treacherous and bewitching scene. Even He Yuan, who had been calm and collected all this time, gave up pondering over the situation. She opened her eyes wide and looked over. Luo Nan truly withdrew his hand when he finished drawing the outline of Zhang Yingying's body. This was already enough for him. Luo Nan narrowed his eyes at this moment. He didn't need to use his naked eyes for his mental senses to light up with resplendent starlight. What should have been the cat's eye's position was not the cat's eye. Instead, it was a simple structure formed from a dozen or so bright specks of starlight and the connections between the specks of starlight. Zhang Yingying's position was the same, but it was a bit more concise. This was like the basic composition that people were used to using to mark the constellations in the sky. And within the range of Luo Nan's senses, the number of these constellations was increasing without end. The blessing of Fairchild's Shield of Truth was temporary, but in the end, it allowed Luo Nan to understand what he could do with his current soul strength with the support of a tough and resilient body. Compared to the pure out-of-body state, the body and soul as one state had many limitations, but it also had benefits that the soul body could not achieve. The most direct change was reflected in the mutual interference between the mental and the material planes. The configuration outline of the body and soul as one became the hub for the highly efficient conversion of energy and information. The pressure on the fleshly body exploded, but the consumption caused by the mutual interference decreased by at least 50%. In other words, the effect of Luo Nan's soul strength interfering with reality had doubled in the blink of an eye. And the interference that needed to be overcome during the process was greatly reduced. The first thing that could be seen was the substantial increase in precision. Luo Nan had always been particularly sensitive to energy and information. He could measure the material plane in terms of precision. His limit was displayed when he used clairvoyance on his own body. It was approximately 1/10 millimeter. When placed outside his body, it was on the millimeter scale. It was only a rough observation, it was not particularly exquisite. But right now, the limit of his external precision easily broke through the domain of 1/10 millimeter. The results even surpassed the resolution of the naked eye. Even though there was still a difference of heaven and earth between this and precise observation instruments on the nanometer scale, this meant that within the range of his clairvoyance, no matter what kind of shadow or corner it was like he was there in person. Moreover, he could see everything clearly regardless of the intensity of the light. And if he concentrated his energy, shrunk the range, and increased it by another level, he was completely capable of accomplishing this. The large increase in precision was obviously a good thing, but this change did not bring convenience to Luo Nan. Instead, it brought a large amount of useless details and junk information. The floating dust, the crawling insects, the filth in the corner of the wall, and of course the background noise of electric currents, the messy breathing of humans, the rustling sound of rain falling from the ceiling of the amusement park, and even the changes in temperature, the exchange of air, and so on. These details, which were hard to notice in the past, were all interwoven and mixed together, pushing towards Luo Nan. Of course, The stimulation of information from multiple levels and angles had to be fed back to the structure of his body and soul. But the corresponding processing efficiency was bound to be limited by the speed of nerve conduction, methods, and other material planes. It was impossible to process everything big and small. Luonan had to make some trade-offs. It must be said that humans had formed a fuzzy recognition mechanism over the course of hundreds of thousands of years of genetic evolution. They were used to starting with the overall characteristics of things, avoiding the pressure of identifying too many details. But the problem Luonan faced right now was that the original fuzzy whole had been divided into large amounts of clear details under the circumstances of the substantial increase in the precision of his senses. The boundary between the two had collapsed. The clearer the details, the greater the amount of information, and the greater the consumption of analytical resources. This directly affected the upper limits of the types of information Luonan could receive. It also limited the range of his senses. Chapter 227. How could the old world be explained in a new way? Luonan faced this challenge the moment he unleashed his all-encompassing senses. He had to focus his attention to analyze the various basic information elements and rearrange their order. There was a period of time when he reached the state where he could no longer see a mountain and no longer see water. Living people, living emotions were all decomposed. For example, cat eyes. Luonan knew that she was afraid the moment he came into contact with her. And this living example would be decomposed by him into breathing, heartbeat, pupils, muscles, and even hormone secretion and conduction. He would then reconstruct them. He wanted to find a more concise, more essential special structure that was able to describe all kinds of people in all kinds of states. If it were anyone else, they would have been beaten senseless in front of such a huge amount of detailed material. They would have lost their ability to completely reconstruct things. They would have been no different from a lunatic at that time. Luonan was stupefied in the beginning. The radius of his mental senses extended to around 80 meters, covering Area A. His senses nearly collapsed. The large amount of detailed information was like a network virus. It flooded all of his sensors in a short period of time, congealing his neural network. The high-intensity stimulation in a short period of time caused him to experience serious neurological activity suppression. His cognitive abilities greatly deteriorated, and his IQ dropped by a level. Fortunately, Luonan had the support of the Shield of Truth. His nervous system and even his entire fleshly body had a substantial increase in endurance and recovery. This allowed him to withstand the initial assault of the junk information. Then Luonan made a crucial choice. He temporarily gave up on everything on the purely material plane. He only paid attention to the mutual interference between the mental and material planes. In other words, the domain of life. This was probably around the time when Red Fox was yelling at Hiyuan to wipe his face and butt. Back then, Luonan just wanted to fight for his honor. He wanted to use the most outstanding results to complete Hiyuan's mission and shut up Red Fox's stinky mouth. According to the requirements of the mission, the most crucial thing was to find the hidden Ablatum Knights of the Order of Justice. Luonan's choice was forced by the situation. But it was precisely because of this that he unexpectedly broke through his blocked train of thought. The number of constellations increased endlessly. Cat Eyes and Zhang Yingying weren't the only ones. Everyone in the surroundings, including Hiyuan, Bai Xinyan, Shuelei, Shueweluan, and the Special Forces, were all transforming in this direction under the clairvoyance of Luonan's mental senses. However, compared to Cat Eyes and Zhang Yingying's constellations that were close to abstract symbols, the others' reflections were more like sketches of portraits that were quickly copied. The lines were scattered and scattered, covering up the stars. They were faintly discernible and had a somewhat hard-to-determine meaning. Luonan called them life sketches. This was his new interpretation of the old world. The real world was still an object that could be ignored. Luonan was in the middle of comprehending and combing through the marvels of the life sketches when someone grabbed him by the collar. "Kid, you're acting like a hoodlum. What the hell are you doing?" The only one who could do that was Zhang Yingying. She finally broke free from Bai Xinyan's control and rushed forward to retaliate. She turned her face and asked Cat Eyes, "Kitty, are you all right?" Cat Eyes did not speak. She just lowered her eyes. The shadow of her flat-brimmed hat covered half her face. She did not look happy no matter how one looked at it. "Hey, are you guys done yet?" Papercut finally could not hold back from speaking in the encrypted channel. "This isn't the time to be flirting, right?" The words were directed at Zhang Yingying, but halfway through his words, Papercut inexplicably recalled Luonan's pair of motley eyes. He shuddered. He instinctively felt that he should not overlook this fellow with those evil eyes. His thoughts spun and he simply said, "Boss Luo, I don't have any other requests. Can you give me a clear explanation? Even if you don't want to prove it, a reason is fine." Papercut and Bamboo Pole had already arrived at the outskirts of Frost River reality. They had locked onto Red Fox's position. He said this because he wanted to use the conversation in the encrypted channel to distract Red Fox's attention. Papercut did not even hope that Luonan would reply. As long as Red Fox could see Luonan's eyes, he would be stunned. "Hey Cat Eyes, what the hell are you looking at the floor for?" Just as he was quietly closing in, feeling the pressure like a mountain, a buzzing sound suddenly brushed past his head. He raised his head and saw a miniature flying shuttle that was only half the length of an arm. It streaked through the curtain of rain in the night sky and plunged into the hall of Frost River reality. Deep space gray paint job. Military? Or is it the aerospace army? Papercut saw the origin of the flying shuttle and felt it was a bit strange. However, he did not have the time to think too much about it. Suddenly, a brand new image popped up in the encrypted channel. It was a real-time surveillance video. It was shot from a high vantage point in the inner region of Frost River reality. It looked a bit shaky. Papercut immediately thought that this was the masterpiece of the flying shuttle from the military. The image of the military flying shuttle entered the encrypted channel of the society. What was going on? Before he could figure it out, the image split up and connected to the surveillance results of Frost River reality itself. The flying shuttle was taken into the frame. From this angle, one could see the eye-catching military logo on the side of the shuttle. The flying shuttle passed through several surveillance cameras in a row. It flew nimbly within Frost River reality. The built-in camera circled the most critical area, Area A. Then the camera zoomed in and narrowed its range. Soon it locked onto the true target. Right in the center of the camera was the fat corpse that Luonan called the Ablatum Knight. At the same time, the main image split up once more. There was an additional surveillance camera that illuminated the fat corpse from a different angle. What's the meaning of this? She's playing for real. Papercut and Bamboo Pole's exclamations were completely different. Papercut was stunned. He turned his head and saw Bamboo Pole give him a signal. Bamboo Pole extended 3 fingers. Right now, the two of them were only 5 meters away from Red Fox. Red Fox seemed to be in a daze. He was completely unaware of what was happening. Papercut dispelled his distracting thoughts. He did not care about the progress of the video in the encrypted channel. Under Bamboo Pole's command, he counted to 3 and suddenly pounced forward. He reached out and grabbed Red Fox's left shoulder. At the same time, Bamboo Pole grabbed Red Fox's right shoulder. The two of them exerted force at the same time. They had to prevent Red Fox from breaking free. However, the two of them were curious after they made contact. Where did that feeling of being solid and empty come from? In any case, they had Red Fox under control. Red Fox was clearly a bit stunned, but he did not struggle. Papercut was quite baffled. Could it be that Red Fox had figured it out? Or, he had a feeling in his heart. His attention returned to the encrypted channel. He saw the gunmen of the Order finally discover the troublesome intruder that was the military flying shuttle. They immediately raised their guns and fired. The military flying shuttle made evasive maneuvers. However, several gunmen with a high level of tacit understanding fired in a crisscrossed manner. In the end, the flying shuttle was blasted apart by the electromagnetic bullets in midair. The image that overlooked the scene instantly turned black. However, it could be seen from the surveillance footage that the flying shuttle's own weapons had opened fire at the same time before being shot. The target was not any of the gunmen. It was the fat corpse that was lying on the ground. The military is verifying it? Before Papercut could finish his thought, the fat corpse exploded with a bang in the next second. Flesh, blood, and bones sprayed everywhere. The ground was filled with holes wherever it passed. The nearby walls were pierced through. The penetrative power was incomparable. What made everyone's eyelids twitch the most was that a small and thin figure shot out from the splattering mist of blood. It instantly flashed out of the surveillance footage. Chapter 228. What the hell? Papercut's exclamation was absolutely the thoughts of most people in the encrypted channel. Although the skinny figure was fast, there was not a single person in the encrypted channel who did not have sharp eyes and ears. They could clearly see the flickering changes of the figure. The skinny figure had clearly leaped out from the exploded corpse. The monitoring screen switched quickly. It switched continuously, but it only captured a fleeting afterimage. This situation persisted for around 3 to 5 seconds before the screen turned black once more. It was at this moment that all the monitoring screens were finished. Papercut hurriedly asked Bamboo Pole, "What's going on?" Bamboo Pole was helpless. "Don't ask me. Someone just used official channels to take away the highest level of authority in the monitoring system. Then, the order of justice probably carried out physical destruction. Now I can retreat." Most people ignored this clumsy joke. Their minds were still flashing with the earlier scene. The figure that leaped out from the disintegrated corpse. There was no doubt that the argument just now had a result. But the encrypted channel was extremely silent. Whether it was Luo Nan or poisonous snake Zhang Yingying, neither of them spoke. Clearly, they were taking Red Fox's emotions into consideration. Of course, this was good, but Papercut and Bamboo Pole glanced at each other. They secretly tightened their grip at the same time to prevent Red Fox from thinking things through and doing something irrational. "The police are here," Red Fox said coldly. The three of them were too eye-catching right now. They poked into the stream of people, holding their shoulders and arms. They looked like plainclothes thieves. A police officer controlling the order of the scene discovered this situation. He immediately approached with his gun pointed. Papercut would not dare to let go even if the Emperor of Heaven came, let alone the police. He did not know how to persuade Red Fox. Bamboo Pole used a method of provocation to speak. "A man is a man. If you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss. Do as you please." Red Fox was surprisingly straightforward. Papercut and Bamboo Pole looked at each other when they heard this. They just felt that Red Fox was so calm that it gave them headaches. They were unable to judge him. Red Fox just shook his shoulders and slid away from the grip of the two. He did not make any further movements. He just said calmly, "That fellow is Ghost Thunder. I met him once before." "Damn. It really is that big bomb." Papercut's answer was like a piece of paper that was broken with a touch. Ghost Thunder was one of the most famous Ablatum Knights of the Order of Justice in Xia City. This fellow's most famous ability was that he could turn most of the materials he came into contact with into terrifying explosives. Coupled with his extraordinary movement speed, whether it was attacking or assassinating, he was a terrifying character. The military shuttle's inexplicable verification had actually activated this terrifying character. No one knew who this guy's next target would be. The military has set the pace well. Scissors grumbled under his breath, but then he realized that something was wrong. It seemed like when the military shuttle flew in, a certain someone's reaction was very strange. He turned to look at Bamboo Pole. "What did you say earlier? Serious? Who's serious?" Bamboo Pole did not reply immediately. Instead, he sent a message into the encrypted channel. "We have met up with Red Fox. Be careful, it's Ghost Thunder." Now, everyone should have no objections to Mr. Luo's omnidirectional sensing ability. The one who spoke was He Yuan. No one would have thought that she, the operations manager, would not be afraid of blowing things up even though Zhang Yingying had misgivings. She would speak so directly. Papercut cried out bitterly in his heart. He instinctively reached out to grab Red Fox, but Red Fox did not move at all. His face was expressionless. Could it be that he was willing to accept his loss? Or was he drugged with bewitching drugs? Papercut retracted his hand in embarrassment. He Yuan did not pay attention to the matter of Ghost Thunder in the encrypted channel at this time. She just extended the topic of omnidirectional sensing. She issued an order. From now on, all communication must be done through the encrypted channel. Mr. Luo Cat Eyes confirmed the current omnidirectional sensing radius. 55 meters. Cat Eyes' answer was straightforward. This number was 10% higher than her usual performance. 80 meters. Luo Nan's nervous activity suppression symptoms had already disappeared. He was freed from his state of turning a deaf ear. He hesitated for a moment when he heard this and reported a relatively conservative number. For the time being, Luo Nan was uncertain of He Yuan's mission requirements. He needed to be cautious. This was the limit of his ability to balance his life form in the purely material plane. He was a bit stronger than Cat Eyes, but he was far too lacking compared to the 500-meter sensing radius he had in his last operation. Sure enough, He Yuan was a bit surprised. 80 meters? Luo Nan was just about to explain when Zhang Yingying exposed the fact that she had violated the rules by looking up classified information. I remember that it was 500 meters in the briefing, but it was in an abnormal soul-attached state. Now that my body and soul are one, I can retain 16% of my sensing radius. Is the Shield of Truth really that useful? Luo Nan blinked. Was this number acceptable? He could not help but ask, what's the standard for 16%? Newbie. Zhang Yingying curled her lips in disgust, but she still explained, due to the limitations of the material plane, the normal sensing range of a mentally enhanced person in the state of body and soul as one has a huge gap when compared to the soul-attached, out-of-body state and other mental forms. Normally, a person who can reach 8% to 10% is considered qualified. On the other hand, for someone like Kat who specializes in perception, when she becomes an architect, she can casually go out-of-body state. It is possible for her sensing range to explosively increase by 10 or 20 times. At that time you won't be considered much. Cat Eyes did not respond to Zhang Yingying's praise. Luo Nan slowly nodded his head. He had a general understanding of his level and position. Zhang Yingying was right. The enhancement of the Shield of Truth played a crucial role in supporting his current sensing range. His sensing radius of 80 meters was achieved by relying on his strong physical body's endurance. However, Zhang Yingying had used the wrong data. Luo Nan's retention ratio wasn't 16%. It was 10% or even lower. Last time, Luo Nan's soul was in an out-of-body state. Thanks to the Wraith Sign's 2 consecutive sacrificial activities, Luo Nan's mental senses had reached a radius of 800 meters. Yesterday the Wraith Sign had successfully hunted, causing his soul power to rise once again. Perhaps the upper limit of his sensing range would increase a little, but he didn't dare to try it anymore. The current range of Luo Nan's natural senses was only around 10 meters. The upper limit of his senses was 800 meters and only 1.2% of his senses were retained. This was 6 to 7 times lower than the lower limit. It was simply too horrible to look at. It was clear to see just how far the imbalance between his body and soul had reached. The increase in physical strength was not something that could be done in a day. It could not be rushed. However, Luo Nan had reason to believe that even if the effects of the Shield of Truth disappeared in the future, his retention ratio would no longer hover at the level of 1%. Instead, it would increase by a considerable amount. As for how much it would increase, that would depend on his life sketch. It would depend on whether or not it was a reasonable and self-consistent new explanation of the old world. Right now, it looked like this was indeed a feasible direction. Draw a sketch. Refine a configuration. Use the most basic of points and lines to depict a rough and distinct life sketch. When the life sketch was simplified to its pinnacle, just like Cat Eyes and Zhang Yingying, every living being was depicted with concise points and lines. They were like groups of constellations on an ancient star atlas. They were shaken to various parts of the deep void, and with Luo Nan as the center, they revolved and cruised. And this star atlas was endlessly expanding deeper and wider. The current range had already expanded to over 100 meters, completely covering Area A of Frost River reality. Chapter 229. This was perhaps the clearest command He Yuan had issued since the beginning of tonight's operation. She even used the form of text to post the instructions in the encrypted channel. Current objective: eliminate all gunmen of the Order. Priority is given to the non-ability users. Luo Nan is the first executor of Frost River reality and the connected buildings, while Cat Eyes is the second executor. Everyone else, protect Luo Nan and Cat Eyes as they move safely. Ensure that the entire range of Luo Nan's senses covers the entirety of Frost River reality and the connected buildings. What does that mean? The target itself was very clear, but not many people understood He Yuan's intentions. If he wanted to deal with the enemy, what about the Ablatum Knights of the Church? What about An Wang and the other secular officiants? That was the real deal. It's true that the opponent is currently focusing all his attention on Child, but do you really think he's a target when you make a move? I really don't know what He Yuan is thinking. Papercut turned his head to look at Bamboo Pole. You've been on a mission with the secretary before. Was she like this before? Papercut had already spoken rather tactfully. His true meaning was, why did this commander of the military's elite Deep Blue Walkers feel so unreliable? Bamboo Pole didn't say anything. He just smiled and tapped his ear, reminding him that He Yuan had already ordered all communication to be done through the encrypted channel set up by the Hexeer. As the commander, He Yuan issued an official order, and the encrypted channel immediately cleared up. Only the status of execution could be reported. To put it bluntly, this meant, from now on, everyone just focus on doing their job and don't talk nonsense. Next, He Yuan sent out even more specific orders and details within the encrypted channel. Luo Nan, Cat Eyes, and Shui Lei formed the inner circle. Shui Weiluan and the special police will follow standard operational procedures and execute a closed-loop defense. White Salt, Ying, and I will coordinate with each other on the perimeter. We will cover our advance in the 10 o'clock direction. Outside of Frost River reality, Papercut, who possessed some basic tactical accomplishments, felt his scalp go numb following He Yuan's command. There was nothing much to say about his route of action. The 10 o'clock direction was roughly a 60-degree angle from the Chu He Han boundary, between the private room area and the public arena. Then he moved sideways. The goal was very clear. It was to display Luo Nan's all-encompassing sensing ability to the greatest limit. He would cover the enemies in Area A while pulling apart the distance to react. This choice was very correct. The problem was the formation. The SWAT team's closed-loop defense was a tactical formation used in close-range anti-riot operations. It could be used to protect the target within the closed loop when facing the siege of a large number of thugs who did not have long-range killing weapons. But now He Yuan and the others were not only facing the cold-blooded gunmen of the Order, but also Ghost Thunder, who had a lot of long-range attacks. What would they do if they were hit in the middle by a high-explosive thunder fire? Just what was He Yuan thinking? While Papercut was dumbstruck, Bamboo Pole gestured for him to calm down and not be impatient. Bamboo Pole hinted at Red Fox, indicating that he could restrain himself right now. What about Papercut? At the moment, Bamboo Pole was still providing basic technical support for the logo. In order to avoid any accidents, he took the initiative to ask in the encrypted channel after he appeased Papercut, "Boss Luo, can you confirm that the information conversion of the logo is normal?" Luo Nan probably still wasn't used to this. 3 seconds passed before he said, "It's normal." Papercut scratched his head. He believed that quite a few of his companions who were participating in the operation were feeling the same way as him. Though there was certainly no one who doubted Luo Nan's sensing ability right now, this person was still too noob when it came to doing things. Bamboo Pole, on the other hand, was very patient. He explained one by one, "In order to ensure timely updates, I have already relinquished control rights. Right now you are the #1 controller. The Secretary and Kitten can mark the route and insert flags to make corrections. Have you played the classic Minesweeper before? That's what it means. Right now you can use telekinesis mode to reset the logo into the encrypted channel." Okay. Another 2 seconds passed, and the logo in the encrypted channel was finally reset. The logo was still based on the elevation of Frost River reality. It was densely covered with red and green dots. Those who had participated in the previous debate noticed that the location of the fat corpse no longer had a red dot. It looked like the specific content had been updated. Bamboo Pole gestured an OK to Papercut and Red Fox. He winked, indicating that the little fellow could still be saved. Red Fox's response was cold. Papercut smiled wryly. He felt that he had perfectly substituted himself into Red Fox's previous role. It was awkward no matter how he looked at it. Was he too neurotic? He tried to return to his previous peaceful state, but before Bamboo Pole could put down his hand, nearly half of the 16 or 17 red dots on the logo that represented the enemy were erased in a single breath. What's going on? Papercut felt very mystified. He nearly fainted. Even this can be mishandled? Right now He Yuan was marking the next course of action on the logo. The extending blue arrow clearly stopped. She seemed to be stunned by this sudden scene. The encrypted channel was deathly silent for a time until Luo Nan's voice rang out. He was clearly inexperienced, but he strove to be experienced. It was just like the soldier's report. 7 gunmen have been eliminated. He Yuan? Cat Eyes? ? Bamboo Pole? ! Papercut blurted out, "What the hell?" As for Red Fox, he smacked his fists against his palms, creating a crisp bang. Zhang Yingying had been bouncing around to warm up her body, preparing to deal with the upcoming fierce battle. She nearly sprained her ankle when Luo Nan's message came out. She rushed to support by Xinyan, turned her head and shouted, "Are you kidding me?" Everyone's reactions were different at this very moment. On the map, most of the motionless red dots suddenly became restless. Luo Nan's message continued to update while Cat Eyes added in a hoarse voice, "There are Ablatum Knights advancing toward us. 3 o'clock direction." They disappeared. The possibility of it being Ghost Thunder is extremely high. There are still 3 more behind them. Now 4. It was as if an invisible drum had exploded in the air. The situation that had been stagnant all this time suddenly entered a high-altitude stalling state. Nearly everyone could feel a dizziness that bordered on absurd. Yuan displayed her top-notch mental qualities at this moment. She did not waste words and gave another order, 10 o'clock direction. Ying, hold down the pace. White Salt and I will protect the right flank. The instant her words fell, everyone's vision suddenly darkened. The spectators outside of Frost River Reality cried out in alarm at the same time. At this moment, the focus of everyone's gazes, the triangular spaceship's power supply was cut off. The spaceship instantly darkened, and the interior of the spaceship was pitch black in comparison to the spotlights outside. Only a second or two passed before the cries of alarm scattered. This was because the darkness did not just cover Frost River Reality. It spread to the 3 connected buildings at an inconceivable speed. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.